Hello and welcome for today's cryptid horror stories. In the comments, where are you from and what kind of cryptids do you like? Now for the stories. The Ancient Enmity, Wendigo vs. Skinwalker vs. Bigfoot. My name is Elias Blackwood, and I have been a park ranger at the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument for 13 years. I have encountered bears, mountain lions, and once helped rescue a hiker who had fallen 200 feet into a ravine. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the night of August 14th, when three ancient horrors descended upon my territory and engaged in a war that would claim 17 lives before dawn. This is my testimony, written from my hospital bed where I recover from wounds that should have killed me. The doctors say I will never walk properly again, that the frostbite damage to my legs was too severe. They don't know that the cold that bit into my flesh came not from the elements, but from the breath of something that should not exist. The day began like any other in late summer. The morning was warm, with the sun burning off the fog that clung to the valleys between the mountains. I patrolled the eastern sector, checking campsites and ensuring that visitors weren't violating fire restrictions during the dry season. At approximately 3:47 p.m., I received a radio call from dispatcher Sarah Chen about a missing hiker in the deep woods near Miller Lake. Thomas Bradford, age 34, had been expected to return from a solo overnight camping trip the previous evening. His wife had reported him missing when he failed to show up for work that morning. I wasn't particularly concerned at first. Bradford was an experienced outdoorsman, and people sometimes lost track of time in the backcountry. I agreed to check his registered campsite and begin a search pattern. The hike to Miller Lake takes approximately 4 hours on the main trail, but I knew a ranger shortcut that cut the time nearly in half. I shouldered my pack, made sure my radio and emergency beacon were functioning, and set out into the wilderness. The forest was unusually quiet that afternoon. I noticed the absence of birdsong, the lack of squirrel chatter, the way even the insects seemed to have fallen silent. As a ranger, you learn to read the woods like a book, and every instinct I possessed was screaming that something was wrong. The silence was heavy, oppressive, like the air before a thunderstorm. I reached the shores of Miller Lake at approximately 6:30 p.m. The campsite was empty, the tent still standing but the fire pit cold. Bradford's gear was scattered about in a way that suggested hasty departure rather than organized packing. His sleeping bag lay unrolled, half inside the tent, as if he had been roused from sleep and fled into the night. I found his boots near the fire pit, still laced, which meant he had run barefoot into the forest. The implications made my blood run cold. No experienced hiker abandons their boots willingly, not in terrain littered with sharp rocks and roots. I radioed in my findings and requested backup. The dispatcher told me that a search team was being assembled but wouldn't arrive until morning due to the difficulty of the terrain and the approaching darkness. I was ordered to secure the site and wait, but as I examined the area more closely, I found tracks that changed everything. They were barefoot human footprints, elongated and narrow, pressed deep into the soft earth. The stride was impossibly long, suggesting a creature moving at tremendous speed. And there was something else. The tracks were accompanied by a smell, a sweet rotten stench like meat left in the summer sun, mixed with the sharp tang of ozone. I followed the tracks into the forest, against my better judgment and explicit protocol. The trail led away from the lake, up into the higher elevations where the trees grew thick and the underbrush made passage difficult. The sun was setting, painting the western sky in shades of orange and crimson, but I pressed on, driven by a sense of urgency I couldn't explain. The tracks became fresher, the impressions in the soil more distinct. Whatever had made them was close, and whatever they had been pursuing was even closer. At 7:45 p.m. I found Thomas Bradford, or rather, I found what remained of him. He was hanging from a Douglas fir tree, impaled through the chest on a broken branch approximately 15 feet above the ground. His body had been hollowed out, the ribcage cracked open like a lobster shell, organs removed with surgical precision. The cavity of his torso was empty, scraped clean, and his face was frozen in an expression of such profound terror that I had to look away. But the worst part was his legs. They had been gnawed to the bone, the flesh stripped away in strips, and the marrow sucked from the femurs. The ground beneath him was littered with bones that had been split and scraped clean, arranged in a pattern that might have been deliberate or might have been the random scatter of feeding. I stumbled back, my hand fumbling for my sidearm. The radio was forgotten at my hip, the emergency beacon ignored. All I could do was stare at the horror above me and try to comprehend what I was seeing. Bears don't hang their prey from trees. Mountain lions don't hollow out bodies and arrange the remains. This was the work of something intelligent, something that killed not just for food but for pleasure, for ritual, for reasons I couldn't begin to understand. It was then that I heard the first sound, a high-pitched, ululating scream that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was answered by a roar that shook the forest floor, a basso profundo rumble that vibrated in my chest and made my teeth ache. And then, impossibly, I heard a third sound, a chattering, gibbering noise like 1,000 teeth clicking together in rapid succession, accompanied by the snap of breaking branches and the crash of something massive moving through the underbrush. The Wendigo came first, emerging from the shadows between the trees like a nightmare given flesh. It stood nearly 12 feet tall, its body emaciated to the point of skeletal absurdity, skin stretched tight over bones that seemed too long, too angular to belong to any natural creature. Its head was an elongated skull with empty eye sockets that burned with pale blue fire, and its mouth was a gaping maw filled with needle-thin teeth that curved backward like fishhooks. It moved with jerky, insectal speed, joints bending in directions that made me want to look away, and it smelled of frozen graves and ancient hunger. Behind it, or perhaps beside it, came the Skinwalker. If the Wendigo was a creature of ice and hunger, the Skinwalker was something else entirely, a shifting, protean horror that seemed to change form even as I watched. It wore the skin of something that might once have been human, but the proportions were wrong, the limbs too long, the joints bending in impossible directions. Its face was a mask of stretched flesh, features sliding and reforming like wax melting in the sun. One moment it seemed to have the head of a deer, antlers growing from a human skull. The next, it was all too human, but with eyes that reflected the gathering darkness like a cat's, and a mouth that split its face from ear to ear, filled with rows of shark-like teeth. And between them, crashing through the trees with the force of a freight train, came the Bigfoot. But this was no gentle giant of cryptozoological lore. It was a monster of fur and muscle, standing nearly 9 feet tall and weighing, I estimated, close to 800 pounds. Its fur was matted with blood and worse things, and its face, what I could see of it beneath the tangled hair, was a nightmare of fangs and rage. It moved on 2 legs with surprising grace for something so massive, and when it roared again, I felt the sound in my bones, in my teeth, in the fluid of my inner ear. The 3 creatures faced each other in the clearing where Bradford's remains hung, and I understood that I had stumbled into something ancient, a feud or a territorial dispute that predated human presence in these mountains. The Wendigo and the Skinwalker seemed to focus on each other, while the Bigfoot positioned itself between them and the tree where the body hung. Protecting its kill, I realized, or perhaps claiming it. The battle began without warning. The Skinwalker moved first, launching itself at the Wendigo with supernatural speed. But the Wendigo was faster, impossibly fast, catching the Skinwalker's arm and twisting it with a sound like wet wood snapping. The Skinwalker shrieked and transformed, its arm becoming serpentine, wrapping around the Wendigo's neck and squeezing. The Wendigo's mouth opened impossibly wide, and it bit down on the Skinwalker's shoulder, teeth sinking deep into flesh that hissed and steamed where the cold of the Wendigo's breath met the unnatural heat of the Skinwalker's blood. The Bigfoot roared and charged, slamming into both creatures with the force of a battering ram. The impact knocked all three to the ground, and they rolled and thrashed in the dirt, claws and teeth flashing in the dying light. I saw the Bigfoot's massive hands close around the Wendigo's throat, lifting the skeletal creature and slamming it into a tree with enough force to crack the trunk. But the Wendigo's cold was already working on the Bigfoot, frost forming on the creature's fur, the breath visible as it panted in the summer air. The Skinwalker took advantage of the distraction, scuttling up the tree where Bradford's body hung. It began to feed, tearing strips of flesh from the corpse with its teeth, even as its body continued to shift and change. I saw it become bear-like, then bird-like, then something that was all teeth and hunger, a mouth surrounded by writhing tentacles of flesh. I realized I was still standing there, frozen in place, and I forced myself to move. I backed away slowly, quietly, praying that the combatants would be too focused on each other to notice me. My foot found a root and I stumbled, catching myself on a sapling. The movement caught the attention of the Wendigo, its head snapping around to fix those burning blue eyes on me. It hissed, a sound like steam escaping from a ruptured pipe, and I saw hunger in that gaze, not just for food, but for warmth, for life, for everything that made me human. The Bigfoot chose that moment to attack again, driving its fist into the Wendigo's chest with a sound like a sledgehammer hitting frozen meat. The Wendigo staggered but did not fall, its bony fingers raking across the Bigfoot's face and leaving trails of frostbite that steamed in the cooling air. The Skinwalker dropped from the tree, landing on the Bigfoot's back and driving its claws deep into the creature's neck. The Bigfoot bellowed in rage and pain, reaching back to grab the Skinwalker and tear it away, but the Skinwalker's body was slippery, shifting, becoming liquid and reforming just out of reach. I ran. There was no thought in it, no plan, just the primal need to escape, to put distance between myself and the nightmare unfolding behind me. I ran blindly through the forest, branches whipping at my face, roots threatening to trip me with every step. Behind me, the sounds of battle continued, roars and screams and the wet, tearing sounds of flesh being rended. I heard trees falling, the crack of breaking timber, the heavy thuds of massive bodies colliding. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs ached, until I couldn't hear the sounds of combat anymore. I found myself at the edge of a small creek, the water dark and swift in the twilight. I collapsed on the bank, gasping for breath, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. For a moment, I allowed myself to hope that I had escaped, that the creatures would continue their battle and forget about me. Then I heard footsteps in the underbrush, and I knew that one of them had followed. The footsteps were heavy, dragging, accompanied by the crackle of frost forming on leaves and branches. The Wendigo emerged from the trees, and it was injured. I could see that one of its arms hung at a wrong angle, and a chunk of flesh was missing from its shoulder where the Bigfoot had bitten deep. But the injury seemed to mean nothing to it. It moved toward me with that jerky, stuttering gait, and I could see the hunger in its eye sockets, the blue flames burning brighter, hotter, with the need to consume. I drew my sidearm, a standard-issue Glock 17, and fired. The shots were deafening in the quiet forest, and I emptied the magazine into the creature's chest. The bullets hit with wet thuds, punching holes in that desiccated flesh, but the Wendigo didn't even slow down. It reached me in 3 strides, one bony hand closing around my throat and lifting me off the ground. The cold was immediate and overwhelming, spreading from its touch like frost across a windowpane. I felt my skin burning with cold, felt the moisture in my eyes beginning to freeze, and I knew that I was going to die. Then the Bigfoot crashed through the trees, and I saw that it was even more badly injured than the Wendigo. One of its eyes was missing, the socket a raw, bleeding hole, and its chest was torn open, ribs visible through the matted fur. But it was still moving, still fighting, and it slammed into the Wendigo with a roar that seemed to shake the mountains themselves. I was dropped, falling hard to the ground, and I scrambled away as the 2 titans collided once more. They fought with a savagery that defied description. The Wendigo's cold was so intense that the creek began to freeze, ice forming along the banks and spreading rapidly across the surface. But the Bigfoot was a creature of earth and blood, and it seemed to draw strength from the soil itself. It wrestled the Wendigo to the ground, massive hands closing around that elongated skull, and I heard the sound of bone cracking as it squeezed. The Wendigo screamed, a sound like 1,000 frozen souls crying out in agony, and its body began to convulse. But the Skinwalker had not been idle. While the other two fought, it had been feeding, growing stronger from the flesh of the dead hiker. Now it emerged from the trees, larger than before, its form settling into something new, a monstrous amalgamation of all the creatures it had consumed, with the strength of the bear, the speed of the cougar, and the cunning of the human. It joined the battle, sinking its teeth into the Bigfoot's already wounded neck and tearing away a chunk of flesh the size of a football. The Bigfoot roared and released the Wendigo, turning its full attention to the Skinwalker. It grabbed the shapeshifter and threw it with tremendous force, the Skinwalker's body slamming into a boulder with a wet crunch. But the Skinwalker simply laughed, that chattering, clicking sound, and its body flowed like liquid, reforming, healing the damage in seconds. The Wendigo rose, its skull dented but not destroyed, and all three creatures faced each other again. I saw intelligence in their eyes, ancient and alien, and I understood that this was not just a territorial dispute. This was a ritual, a battle that had been fought countless times over countless millennia, a war between entities that existed outside of natural law. I used the moment of their standoff to crawl away, dragging myself through the dirt toward the creek. The ice had spread across the entire surface now, and I could feel the unnatural cold radiating from it. But it was cover, and I needed cover. I slid into the freezing water, gasping as the cold hit me like a physical blow, and let the current carry me downstream, away from the battle. I don't know how far the creek carried me. I lost consciousness at some point, my body shutting down from the cold and the trauma. When I woke, it was to the sound of gunfire and shouting voices. The search team had arrived, and they were fighting something in the woods. I tried to call out, but my voice was gone, my throat frozen from the Wendigo's touch. I dragged myself from the creek and found that I was only a few hundred yards from the trailhead. The search team had engaged one of the creatures. I couldn't tell which one in my delirium. I heard screams, the wet sounds of bodies being torn apart, the desperate chatter of automatic weapons fire. I wanted to warn them, to tell them to run, but I couldn't move, couldn't speak, could only watch as the horror unfolded. What I saw then will haunt me until the day I die. The Skinwalker, bloated and transformed from its feeding, emerged from the trees and descended upon the search team. They were 8 experienced search and rescue personnel, armed with rifles and sidearms, trained for dangerous situations. They didn't stand a chance. The Skinwalker moved among them like a plague, its body shifting from form to form faster than they could track. One moment it was a wolf, tearing out a man's throat. The next, it was a bear, crushing another against a tree with a hug that snapped his spine. Then it was humanoid, using claws like knives to disembowel a third. I watched Ranger Martinez empty his entire magazine into the creature's chest, and I watched the Skinwalker laugh, the bullets passing through its shifting flesh without leaving a mark. It reached him in 2 strides and did something I still can't fully comprehend. Its body opened like a flower of flesh and bone, petals of skin and muscle unfolding to engulf him whole. The screaming lasted only seconds before the Skinwalker's body closed around him and began to digest him alive. I could see his shape moving beneath the Skinwalker's skin, struggling, thrashing, before going still. 3 members of the team broke and ran, and the Skinwalker let them go, turning its attention back to the battle with the other 2 creatures. I heard the Wendigos scream and the Bigfoots roar, and I knew that the war was still being fought, moving through the forest like a storm of teeth and claws and ancient hatred. I was found at dawn by a second search team, responding to the radio silence from the first. I was hypothermic, frostbitten, barely alive. They rushed me to the hospital, and I spent 3 days in a coma while doctors fought to save my legs from amputation. I was conscious long enough to tell them about the creatures, about the battle, about the deaths. They thought I was delirious, suffering from exposure and trauma. They found the bodies of the search team, or what was left of them, and they found Thomas Bradford's remains. They attributed everything to a bear attack, a freak incident with multiple casualties. But I know the truth. I saw what I saw, and I know that somewhere in those mountains the battle continues. The Wendigo, the Skinwalker, and the Bigfoot are still fighting their ancient war, and any human who gets in their way is simply collateral damage, food for the victor, forgotten by morning. I am writing this from my hospital bed, my legs wrapped in bandages, the doctors telling me I will never walk without pain again. The frostbite patterns on my throat have faded to scars that look like handprints, and I wake every night shivering, remembering the cold of the Wendigo's touch. I don't know which of the 3 creatures won the battle that night. Maybe they're still fighting, moving through the forests of the Pacific Northwest, leaving trails of death in their wake. Maybe one of them will come for me, finish what the Wendigo started. I don't know why I'm writing this. No one will believe me. The official report says bear attack, and that's what will go in the records, but someone needs to know the truth. Someone needs to understand that there are things in this world older than humanity, things that fight wars we cannot comprehend, using weapons of tooth and claw and ancient magic. The Wendigo is hunger without end. The Skinwalker is betrayal given flesh. The Bigfoot is rage incarnate. And when they meet, the only certainty is death. If you're reading this and you're planning to hike in the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument, or anywhere in the Pacific Northwest, pay attention to the signs. The silence of the birds, the absence of game, the strange cold that comes from nowhere on a summer night. If you experience these things, run. Don't wait to see what caused them. Just run and pray that the ancient enemies are too busy with each other to notice you. Because I have seen the end result of their attention, and it is not something any human should witness. Thomas Bradford didn't just die. He was consumed, hollowed out, made into nothing but a shell to be fought over. The search team didn't just die. They were torn apart, eaten alive, absorbed into something that should not exist. And I carry the scars of that night not just on my body, but in my soul and the part of me that knows, beyond any doubt, that monsters are real. The Wendigo's breath is the cold of the grave, and it seeks to consume all warmth, all life, all hope. The Skinwalker wears the skins of the dead and takes their forms, their memories, their voices. It is the perfect predator because it can be anyone, anything. The Bigfoot is strength without mercy, a force of nature that destroys everything in its path. Together, they are the 3 faces of death in the wilderness, and when they clash, the forest runs red with blood. I will never return to the mountains. I will never again walk the trails I once patrolled with such confidence. I'm a broken man, physically and spiritually, and I will spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, waiting for the cold to come again, waiting for the scream that heralds the Wendigo's approach, waiting for the chattering laugh of the Skinwalker, waiting for the earth to shake with the Bigfoot steps. They are out there, still fighting, still killing, still hungry. And one day, when their war is finally won, the victor will turn its attention back to the world of humans, and we will learn what it truly means to be prey. This is my story. This is my warning. Heed it or join the dead who already litter the forests, their bones picked clean, their names forgotten, their deaths attributed to accidents and animals and exposure. The truth is far worse than any of those explanations, and the truth is this. There are monsters in the woods, and they are hungry, and they are fighting, and they do not care about human life except as fuel for their eternal war. May God have mercy on any soul who encounters them. I know He had none for me. I need to continue my account, for there is more to tell. The battle I witnessed was only the beginning, only the first act in a play of horror that would stretch through the longest night of my life. After the search team found me and I was evacuated to the hospital, I believed, I prayed, that my involvement with the ancient creatures was over. I was wrong. So terribly, devastatingly wrong. 3 days after my rescue, while I lay in my hospital bed drifting in and out of consciousness, the creatures continued their war through the forests of the monument. I learned later, from whispered conversations between nurses and the horrified reports of park officials, that 17 people died in the 72 hours following my rescue. 17 souls consumed in the crossfire of a battle they never knew existed. The second night was when the true massacre began. A group of 7 college students had set up camp near Pine Creek, blissfully unaware of the carnage taking place in the higher elevations. They were students from Southern Oregon University, out for a weekend of hiking and partying before the fall semester began. Their names were burned into my memory by the guilt that consumed me. David Chen, Maria Santos, James Jimmy O'Brien, Lisa Zhang, Marcus Williams, Ashley Thompson, and their Rebecca Becky Holloway. They ranged in age from 19 to 22, full of life and laughter and the invincible arrogance of youth. The Wendigo found them first. I learned the details from the sole survivor, though survivor is perhaps too generous a term. Marcus Williams lived, technically, but he would never speak again, would never walk again, would spend the rest of his life in a psychiatric institution heavily sedated and still screaming. The doctors said his vocal cords were permanently damaged from the screams he had uttered that night. When I visited him, against medical advice, against the wishes of my family, against all reason, I found him strapped to his bed, eyes wide and unseeing, mouth open in a permanent rictus of terror. He didn't recognize me. He didn't recognize anything. But when I spoke my name, when I mentioned the word Wendigo, he began to scream, a high, keening sound that went on until the nurses rushed in with sedation. Before that final breakdown, in one of his rare lucid moments, Marcus told me what happened. They had built a fire, roasted marshmallows, told ghost stories. Becky had just finished telling a particularly creepy tale about a skin-stealing witch when the temperature dropped. Not gradually, not the normal cooling of evening, but suddenly, sharply, as if someone had opened a door into the Arctic. Their breath plumed in the air. The fire died, not gradually fading, but extinguished instantly, the flames frozen, the logs encased in ice. And then they heard it, the scream. The same scream I had heard, the sound of frozen souls crying out in endless hunger. Marcus said it seemed to come from everywhere at once, surrounding them, freezing them in place. Ashley was the first to move, grabbing her flashlight and sweeping it toward the tree line. The beam fell on the Wendigo, standing at the edge of their camp, 12 feet of frozen death and endless hunger. It moved faster than the eye could follow. Jimmy tried to run and made it 3 steps before the Wendigo was on him, bony fingers closing around his throat, lifting him into the air. The cold was so intense that Jimmy's skin froze instantly where the creature touched him, frost spreading across his face in a spiderweb pattern. The Wendigo bit into his chest, teeth sinking through clothing and flesh, and began to feed. But not just on meat, on warmth, on life, on the very essence of Jimmy's being. Marcus said he watched his friend's face age decades in seconds, watched his hair turn white and fall out, watched his body shrivel and desiccate until what the Wendigo dropped was barely recognizable as human, just a dried husk that crumbled to dust when it hit the ground. The others ran, scattering in all directions, but the Wendigo was not alone. The Skinwalker emerged from the darkness, wearing a new form now. It had taken Jimmy's shape, his face, his voice. It called to them in Jimmy's voice, begging them to come back, saying he was okay, that it was just a bear, that they needed to stick together. Lisa hesitated, and that hesitation cost her everything. The Skinwalker Jimmy embraced her, and then its body opened like a flower of flesh, just as I had seen it do to Ranger Martinez. Lisa was engulfed, pulled into the Skinwalker's mass, and her screams were muffled by the walls of flesh that surrounded her. The Skinwalker's body bulged and rippled as Lisa struggled inside, her silhouette visible through the translucent skin, her hands pressed against the membrane from within, her mouth open in a scream that never quite escaped. The digestion took minutes, and the Skinwalker held her there, savoring the fear, before her struggles ceased and her outline faded, absorbed into the creature's biomass. Maria and Becky ran together, hand in hand, toward the creek. The Bigfoot met them there. It rose from the water like a nightmare, covered in blood and like weed, one eye still missing but the other blazing with feral intelligence. Becky tripped on a root and fell, and the Bigfoot was on her, massive hands ripping her apart with casual brutality. Marcus said it was like watching someone tear apart a doll, limbs separating from sockets, spine pulled from the body in a wet, sucking sound, organs spilling onto the forest floor. The Bigfoot didn't eat her. It simply destroyed her, leaving the pieces scattered across the creek bank like discarded trash. Maria kept running, and the Bigfoot let her go, turning its attention to David, who had tried to hide behind a fallen log. The creature's sense of smell was preternatural, and it found him instantly, lifting the log with one hand and seizing David with the other. It slammed him against a tree once, twice, 3 times, until his skull cracked open like an egg and his brains painted the bark in glistening patterns. The Bigfoot then did something I still don't understand. It seemed to paint itself with David's blood, rubbing the gore into its fur in some kind of ritual, before turning to search for more prey. Marcus alone escaped, though escape is a relative term. He ran blindly through the woods, branches tearing at his face, roots tripping him, terror lending him speed he didn't know he possessed. He ran for 3 hours until he collapsed on the highway, nearly run over by a logging truck. The driver found him raving about monsters and ice and friends being eaten alive. The authorities initially dismissed his claims as drug-induced hallucinations, until they found the campsite, and the remains, and the impossible cold that still clung to the area days later, ice that wouldn't melt even in the summer sun. But I knew the truth. The ancient enemies were still fighting, still feeding, and the college students were simply casualties in their war. I learned from the whispers of park rangers who visited my hospital room, from the hushed conversations of FBI agents who came to investigate the massacre, that the battle had moved. The creatures were no longer staying in one place, no longer content with isolated kills. They were hunting each other now, and everywhere they met, death followed. The third day brought the final confrontation, the battle that would end, or at least pause, their war. I learned of it from a source I still cannot fully explain. An old woman came to my hospital room, appearing somehow despite the security and the guards and the nurses who swore no one had entered. She called herself Hastian, said she was Navajo, said she had been tracking the Skinwalker for 60 years. She knew about the Wendigo too, and about the Bigfoot, which she called by a name in a language I couldn't pronounce, a name that meant Old One or First Walker or something similar. Hastian told me that the 3 creatures were ancient enemies, bound by some pact or curse to fight whenever they met. The Wendigo was once human, she said, long ago, a man who had committed the ultimate sin of cannibalism and been transformed by the spirits into an eternal hunger. It sought warmth because it had none of its own, sought life because it was dead inside, sought human flesh because that was what had damned it and what might, in some twisted logic, redeem it. The Skinwalker was a witch, a human who had gained supernatural powers through murder and dark rituals, who wore the skins of animals and people to take their forms. It fed on fear as much as flesh, grew stronger with each soul it consumed. The Bigfoot was oldest of all, she said, a survivor from a time before humans, a creature of the earth that had watched empires rise and fall and cared nothing for any of them. It was territorial, protective of its hunting grounds, and saw both the Wendigo and Skinwalker as invaders to be destroyed. Hastian told me that the final battle was coming that night, that the creatures had been herding each other toward a specific location, the old granite quarry near the monument's northern boundary. She said she intended to witness it, to see if one of them might finally be destroyed, and she asked if I wanted to come. I should have said no. I should have stayed in my hospital bed and let the doctors continue their ministrations. But some part of me, the part that was still a ranger, still felt responsible for the deaths that had occurred on my watch, needed to see this through, needed to know if it would end. Hastian helped me escape the hospital. She was stronger than she looked, ancient but powerful, and she had a truck waiting outside. She drove us to the quarry in silence, and I spent the ride preparing myself for what I might see, preparing myself for death. I was still weak, still injured, my legs barely able to support my weight. I leaned on a crutch in Hastian's arm as we climbed the trail to the quarry's edge. The sun was setting as we arrived, painting the granite walls in shades of blood and fire. And there, in the quarry's depths, the three creatures waited. The Wendigo stood atop a pillar of stone, its emaciated form silhouetted against the dying light. The cold radiating from it was visible now, a shimmer in the air like heat haze in reverse. Frost covered every surface, turning the granite white and slick. The creature had healed from its injuries, or perhaps it simply couldn't be injured in any permanent way. Its eye sockets burned with that terrible blue light, and its mouth hung open in a grin of needle teeth. The Skinwalker was on the opposite side of the quarry, crouched on a ledge like some obscene gargoyle. It had taken a new form, larger than before, bloated with the flesh of its victims. It seemed to be made of parts: bear's claws, cougar's tail, human torso, wolf's head, all shifting and merging and separating in a constant, nauseating dance. It had grown since I last saw it, fed on so many souls that it was now nearly as large as the Wendigo itself. And at the bottom of the quarry, standing in the dry basin that had once held water, was the Bigfoot. It too had healed, or perhaps it was simply too stubborn to stay injured. Its fur was matted with blood, its own and others, and its single eye gleamed with an intelligence that was almost human. It held a massive granite boulder in its hands, shaped by its strength into a crude weapon, and it watched the other two with the patience of a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. The battle began when the last sliver of sun disappeared below the horizon. The Wendigo moved first, launching itself from its pillar with a scream that seemed to freeze the very air. It fell upon the Bigfoot like a bolt of frozen lightning, claws extended, mouth gaping. The Bigfoot met it with the boulder, swinging with all its tremendous strength. The impact should have shattered the Wendigo's skull, should have destroyed it utterly. But the Wendigo was no longer entirely physical. The boulder passed through it, or perhaps the Wendigo passed around it, and those bony fingers closed on the Bigfoot's arm. The cold was devastating. I watched from the quarry's edge, shivering despite the summer evening, as frost spread across the Bigfoot's fur in an instant, ice forming inches thick in mere seconds. The creature roared and tried to pull away, but the Wendigo held fast, climbing up the Bigfoot's body like a spider, mouth seeking the throat. The Bigfoot dropped the boulder and grabbed the Wendigo with both hands, trying to tear it away. But where they touched, the cold was so intense that the Bigfoot's flesh froze, skin cracking, blood crystallizing before it could flow. The Skinwalker joined the fray, dropping from its ledge and landing on the Bigfoot's back. It had transformed its hands into something like scythes, blades of bone that it drove into the Bigfoot's shoulders, seeking to sever the tendons and bring the creature down. The Bigfoot roared and thrashed, slamming itself backward into the granite wall, crushing the Skinwalker between its massive bulk and the stone. I heard the wet crunch of breaking bones, saw the Skinwalker's body flatten and distort, but it simply laughed and reformed, flowing around the Bigfoot like water, wrapping itself around the creature's chest and squeezing. The three titans struggled in the quarry's depths, and the noise was deafening, roars and screams and the crash of stone, the wet sounds of flesh being torn and frozen and reformed. The Bigfoot managed to tear the Wendigo away and throw it against the opposite wall, the impact cracking the granite. But the Wendigo simply stood, shaking off stone fragments, and screamed again. The sound was a weapon, I realized, a wave of cold that washed over the other two, freezing them in place momentarily. The Skinwalker's body became sluggish, its movements slowing, ice forming on its borrowed flesh. The Bigfoot's fur became encased in frost, its breath visible in clouds, its movement stiffening. The Wendigo advanced, taking advantage of its enemy's momentary helplessness. It went for the Skinwalker first, perhaps seeing it as the greater threat, or perhaps simply following some ancient instinct I couldn't understand. It fell upon the shapeshifter, teeth sinking into the borrowed flesh, and began to feed. Not on meat, but on essence, on power, on the souls the Skinwalker had consumed. I saw the Skinwalker writhe and shriek as the Wendigo drank, saw its borrowed forms flicker and fade, saw it shrink as the Wendigo grew, absorbing the power of the consumed souls. But the Bigfoot was not done. It broke free of the ice with a tremendous effort, skin tearing where frost had fused it to the stone, blood steaming in the cold air. It grabbed the Wendigo and threw it away from the Skinwalker, then turned its full fury on the weakened shapeshifter. Its hands closed around the Skinwalker's throat, and I saw the Bigfoot's mouth open in what might have been words, some ancient challenge or curse, before it began to squeeze. The Skinwalker's body convulsed, forms shifting madly as it tried to escape, becoming smoke, becoming liquid, becoming a swarm of insects. But the Bigfoot held on, its grip powered by rage and earth and something older than the Skinwalker's stolen magic. The Wendigo recovered and attacked again, but this time the Skinwalker was ready. Even as the Bigfoot strangled it, the Skinwalker lashed out at the Wendigo, body opening into that horrible flower of flesh, trying to engulf its ancient enemy. The Wendigo was caught, pulled into the Skinwalker's mass, and for a moment the two were joined in a grotesque parody of embrace. I saw the Wendigo's face appear through the Skinwalker's translucent skin, mouth open in a scream that made my blood freeze in my veins, blue eyes blazing with hatred and hunger. Then the Bigfoot did something extraordinary. It grabbed both creatures, holding them together against its chest, and ran. It ran full tilt into the granite wall, smashing them both against the stone with crushing force. I heard bones break, heard flesh tear, heard screams that were not entirely physical, that seemed to echo in my mind as much as my ears. The Bigfoot pulled back and slammed them again, and again, using its own body as a weapon, sacrificing itself to destroy its enemies. On the third impact, something changed. The Skinwalker's body split open, not in a controlled way but as a wound, a rupture, its stolen essence spilling out in a torrent of black fluid and screaming souls. I saw shapes in that fluid, human shapes, animal shapes, all trying to escape, all dissipating like smoke. The Skinwalker shrieked, a sound of pure agony and rage, and released the Wendigo, trying to gather itself, trying to heal. But the Wendigo was not whole either. The impacts had damaged it, cracked its frozen form, and its cold was leaking out, visible as a mist that rose from its body. It staggered, eye sockets dimming, and I saw something I had never expected to see in such a creature: fear. It was afraid, and it began to retreat, climbing the granite wall with desperate speed, seeking escape. The Bigfoot let it go, turning its full attention to the Skinwalker. The shapeshifter was weakened, its stolen forms flickering, its body shrinking. It tried to run, tried to become a bird and fly away, but the Bigfoot caught it mid-transformation, massive hand closing around a throat that was half human, half hawk. The Bigfoot squeezed, and I heard the crunch of vertebrae, saw the Skinwalker's body go limp. But the creature was not dead. It couldn't die, not truly, not permanently. Its body dissolved, became smoke, became shadow, became nothing, and I saw a dark shape flow away across the quarry floor, escaping into the cracks and crevices of the stone. The Bigfoot roared in frustration, pounding the ground where the Skinwalker had been, but it was gone. Banished, perhaps, or simply hiding, but gone for now. The Bigfoot stood alone in the quarry, wounded more grievously than ever. Its fur was gone in patches, burned away by the Wendigo's cold or torn away in the battle. Its chest was a ruin of frozen flesh and broken bone. Its remaining eye was clouded cataract white, and I realized it was going blind. It swayed on its feet, and I thought it might fall, might finally die. But it didn't. It threw back its head and roared, a sound of triumph and defiance that shook the mountains, and then it turned and limped away, disappearing into the darkness of the forest. It had won, I realized, or at least survived. The Skinwalker was banished, the Wendigo fled, and the Bigfoot, battered and broken but unbowed, would live to fight another day. Hastian and I watched it go, and then she turned to me with ancient eyes that held too much knowledge. "It is not over," she said. "It will never be over. They are eternal, these three, bound together by blood and magic and hate. They will meet again in another place in another time, and the battle will begin anew. But for now, for tonight, it is finished." She helped me back to her truck and drove me back to the hospital. I was found the next morning in my bed, and no one could explain how I had gotten there. The official story was that I had sleepwalked, that my injuries had caused delusions, that I had imagined the whole thing. The quarry was searched, and signs of a struggle were found: blood on the stone, fur, and strange tissue samples, scorch marks from extreme cold, but nothing conclusive. The deaths of the 17 people killed over those 3 days were attributed to a combination of bear attacks, exposure, and unknown animal maulings. But I know the truth. I saw what I saw, and I know that somewhere in the forests of the Pacific Northwest, the Wendigo still hungers, the Skinwalker still hunts, and the Bigfoot still walks. They are out there, ancient and terrible, fighting their eternal war, and any human who crosses their path is simply food, simply fuel, simply forgotten. I am writing this from my hospital bed, my body broken but my mind clear. I will never walk the trails again, will never hear the birdsong without fear, will never look at a forest without wondering what lurks in its depths. The Wendigo's touch left scars that will never heal, frostbite patterns on my legs that ache in every weather. But worse are the scars on my soul, the memories of what I witnessed, the knowledge that monsters are real. To anyone who reads this, stay out of the deep woods. Stay away from the old places, the wild places, the places where humans rarely tread. The Wendigo, the Skinwalker, and the Bigfoot are not legends. They are not stories told around campfires to frighten children. They are real, they are hungry, and they are fighting a war that has lasted since before humans drew breath. May God have mercy on your soul if you encounter them. He had none for me. There is more I must record, more horror that I witnessed in the aftermath of that titanic battle. The official report says the incident ended with the quarry confrontation, that the 17 deaths were the total casualty count, that the threat was contained. But I know better. The creatures did not simply vanish after that night. They retreated, yes, licked their wounds, hid in the deep places where humans rarely venture. But they did not stop hunting. They did not stop killing. And in the weeks that followed, I would learn that the war was far from over. I remained in the hospital for 6 weeks, undergoing surgeries to save my legs from amputation. The frostbite damage was extensive, the tissue necrotic in places where the Wendigo's cold had penetrated deepest. The doctors removed 3 toes from my left foot and 2 from my right. They grafted skin from my thighs to cover the wounds on my calves where the cold had burned through to the bone. They told me I was lucky to be alive, that I should be grateful, that my recovery was a miracle. I felt no gratitude. I felt only terror and guilt, and a burning need to understand what I had witnessed. I spent my days reading everything I could find about Wendigos, Skinwalkers, and Bigfoot. I reached out to cryptozoologists, folklorists, Native American historians. Most dismissed me as a trauma victim suffering from delusions. But a few listened, a few believed, and from them I learned more than I ever wanted to know. The Wendigo, I learned, was not a single creature but a curse, a spiritual infection that passed from host to host whenever one succumbed to the sin that created it. The hunger was never satisfied, could never be satisfied because it was not physical hunger but spiritual starvation. The Wendigo consumed warmth and life not because it needed them, but because it had lost them, because it was trying to fill a void that could never be filled. Every soul it consumed only made the void larger, the hunger greater, the suffering more profound. The creature I had seen was ancient, centuries old at least, having consumed hundreds of souls in its endless quest for satisfaction. The Skinwalker was different, a human who had chosen dark magic, who had committed atrocities to gain power. The Navajo called them Ye Naldlushea. With it, he goes on all fours, and they were feared above all other things. To become a Skinwalker, one had to kill a family member, had to wear their skin, had to embrace the darkest aspects of human nature. Once transformed, the Skinwalker could take any form, could mimic any voice, could become anyone or anything it chose. It fed on fear as much as flesh, grew stronger with every soul it consumed, every form it stole. The creature in the quarry had been old, Hastian told me, older than she was, having stolen hundreds of skins over its long existence. The Bigfoot remained the most mysterious. The native tribes had many names for it: Sasquatch, Stiaha, Bukwas, and many stories about its origins. Some said it was a spirit of the forest, guardian of the wild places. Others said it was a remnant of an ancient race, hidden from humans for millennia. Still others claimed it was something else entirely, something that had come from the stars or from another dimension, something that had always been here, watching, waiting. What I knew was that it was ancient, powerful, and fiercely territorial. It had fought the Wendigo and Skinwalker not because it cared about humans, but because it saw them as invaders, threats to its domain. 6 weeks after the quarry battle, I was released from the hospital. I returned to my small cabin on the edge of the park, against the advice of everyone who cared about me. I told them I needed closure, needed to face my fears, needed to prove to myself that I could still function in the world. The truth was darker. I needed to know if they were still out there, still hunting, still fighting. I needed to know if the war continued. It did. I learned of the next deaths within days of my return. A logging crew working in the northern sector had disappeared, all 12 men vanishing overnight. Their camp was found destroyed, equipment scattered, tents torn to shreds. Blood was everywhere, on the trees, on the ground, on the machinery, but no bodies were ever found. The official story was a bear attack, a rogue grizzly that had rampaged through the camp and dragged off the bodies to its den. But I knew better. Bears don't drain blood without leaving bodies. Bears don't freeze equipment solid. Bears don't leave behind the stench of ozone and ancient hunger. I went to the site against all common sense, against all survival instinct. I was still weak, still healing, still walking with a cane. But I had to know, had to see if they were back, if the battle had resumed. The logging camp was a ruin. I arrived at dawn, the mist still clinging to the trees, and I knew instantly that the Wendigo had been there. The cold lingered, unnatural and wrong, frost coating the fallen leaves in August. I found a boot still laced, the leather frozen solid. I found a hard hat, the plastic cracked by extreme cold. I found blood, frozen in patterns that suggested violent, desperate movement. And I found tracks, 3 sets, converging on the camp from different directions. The Wendigo's barefoot impressions pressed deep into the frozen earth. The Skinwalker's clawed prints, shifting between human and animal and something else. And the Bigfoot's massive tracks, each one 16 inches long, pressed deep by tremendous weight. They had met here, I realized. The battle had resumed, and the logging crew had been caught in the crossfire. 12 men, 12 lives, simply erased from existence, consumed by ancient horrors that saw them as nothing but fuel. I followed the tracks, drawn by some compulsion I couldn't resist. They led away from the camp, up into the high country, toward the alpine meadows where the timberline gave way to rock and ice. I climbed for hours, my damaged legs screaming in protest, my lungs burning from the altitude. I told myself I was investigating, that as a ranger I had a duty to understand what had happened, to find the bodies, to provide closure for the families. I was lying to myself. I was following them because I could not follow them, because some part of me was broken, had been broken by that first encounter, and now I was drawn to them like a moth to flame, like a compass needle to north. I found them at sunset, at the edge of a glacial lake, where the water was still and black and reflected the mountains like a mirror. They were fighting again, and the battle was even more terrible than what I had witnessed before. The Wendigo had changed. It was larger now, bloated with the souls of the logging crew, 12 new lives added to its endless hunger. It stood nearly 15 feet tall, its emaciated form stretched even thinner by the power it contained. Its skin was translucent now, and I could see shapes moving beneath it. Human shapes, faces pressed against the surface from within, mouths open in silent screams. The logging crew was still in there, still conscious, still suffering, their essence being slowly consumed by the Wendigo's endless hunger. The Skinwalker had changed too. It had found new skins, new forms to steal. It wore the shape of a grizzly bear now, but wrong, distorted, with human hands where its paws should be, with a face that was a mosaic of all the people it had consumed. It moved with terrible speed, claws flashing, and each time it struck the Wendigo, it tore away pieces of frozen flesh that shattered like glass. The Bigfoot was there too, and it was dying. I could see that at once. Its wounds from the quarry battle had never healed properly, and new injuries covered its body. One arm hung useless, broken, and frozen. Its chest was a gaping wound, ribs visible, organs exposed. It moved slowly, heavily, but it still fought with a ferocity that took my breath away. It wielded a tree trunk like a club, swinging at both the Wendigo and the Skinwalker, forcing them back, defending its territory with its dying breath. I watched from behind a boulder, unable to look away, unable to run. The battle was mesmerizing, terrible, beautiful in its savagery. The Wendigo attacked with cold, its breath freezing the air, turning the ground to ice, creating spikes of frozen blood that it hurled like javelins. The Skinwalker shapeshifted constantly, becoming bird to escape, becoming wolf to attack, becoming something that was all teeth and tentacles to grapple with the Wendigo. The Bigfoot roared and swung its club, shattering the ice, crushing the Skinwalker's borrowed forms, driving both creatures back toward the lake. The battle lasted hours. I watched the sun set and the stars emerge, watched the aurora borealis dance in the northern sky, watched the creatures fight by the light of a moon that seemed too bright, too close. The Wendigo screamed and the Skinwalker shrieked, and the Bigfoot roared, and the sounds blended into a symphony of horror that I will hear until the day I die. The end came suddenly. The Bigfoot, weakened by its wounds, made a mistake. It overextended, swung its club too hard, and the Wendigo was on it, those bony fingers closing on its throat. The cold was instantaneous and devastating. I saw the Bigfoot's fur turn white with frost, saw its eye freeze solid, saw its blood crystallize in its veins. It tried to fight, tried to tear the Wendigo away, but its movement slowed, stiffened, stopped. The Wendigo held it for a long moment, feeding, consuming the Bigfoot's ancient essence, draining the life from the first walker. Then the Skinwalker struck. While the Wendigo fed, distracted by the kill, the Skinwalker transformed into something new, something it had never shown before. Its body became liquid, became acid, became a wave of corrosive flesh that washed over the Wendigo and the Bigfoot both. I heard screaming. The Wendigo's scream, yes, but also the Bigfoot's, and also voices that were human. The trapped souls of the Wendigo's victims crying out as they were released, as they dissolved, as they were finally, mercifully destroyed. The Skinwalker's acid flesh ate through the Wendigo's frozen form, melting the ice, releasing the souls trapped within. I saw shapes rise from the dissolving mass, human shapes, ghostly and translucent, rising toward the sky like smoke. I saw faces I didn't recognize, faces of the Wendigo's ancient victims, and I saw faces I did recognize. Thomas Bradford, Jimmy O'Brien, Lisa Zhang, the logging crew, all the souls the Wendigo had consumed over centuries of hunger. They rose and they screamed, and then they were gone, released, finally at peace. The Wendigo screamed one last time, a sound of pure agony and rage, and then it too dissolved, melting into a pool of black water that steamed in the cold air. The curse was broken, the ancient spirit finally freed from its frozen prison. The Skinwalker reformed, pulling itself together from the acid that had been its weapon. It was weakened, I could see that. Its stolen forms flickered, unstable. It had spent too much power, used too much of its essence to destroy the Wendigo. It looked around, its shifting face scanning the clearing, and for a moment I thought it would come for me. But then I saw something I didn't expect. The Bigfoot was still alive. Barely, but alive. It lay on the ground, its body frozen, its eye glazed, but its chest still moved, still breathed. The Wendigo's cold had not finished it, or perhaps the Skinwalker's acid had counteracted the freezing, or perhaps the Bigfoot was simply too stubborn to die. It lived, and the Skinwalker saw it, and I saw something pass between them. Recognition, respect, perhaps even something like kinship. The Skinwalker turned away. It flowed across the ground like water, like shadow, like smoke, and disappeared into the darkness of the forest. It left the Bigfoot where it lay, left me where I hid, left the lake and its terrible memories behind. I waited until dawn, until I was sure the Skinwalker was gone. Then I crept from my hiding place and approached the Bigfoot. I told myself I was checking to see if it was alive, if it needed help, if I could do anything. The truth was simpler. I was drawn to it, fascinated by it, needed to see it up close. It was massive, even lying down, even dying. Its fur was matted with blood and frost, its body covered in wounds that would have killed any natural creature. Its eye opened as I approached, and I saw intelligence there, ancient and alien and aware. It looked at me and I looked at it, and for a long moment we simply stared at each other, human and monster, across a gulf of understanding that neither of us could bridge. Then it spoke. I don't know how else to describe it. It didn't use words, not exactly, but I heard its voice in my mind, felt its thoughts like pressure against my consciousness. It said, "Gone, the cold one, the thief, gone." It said, "Rest now, sleep, guard no more." It said, "You, small one, tell them, remember." And then it died. Its eye closed, its chest stopped moving, and the ancient creature that had guarded these forests since before humans existed simply ceased to be. I sat with the body until noon, until the sun was high and the birds began to sing again, the first bird song I had heard in weeks. I sat with it and I wept, not for myself, but for the creature that had died defending its home against horrors it had never asked to face. I reported the location to the authorities. They found the body, of course. It made international news. Bigfoot corpse discovered in Oregon. Cryptozoological discovery of the century. Sasquatch proven real. Scientists descended on the site, took samples, ran tests, argued about taxonomy and classification. The body was studied, dissected, displayed. The fur was analyzed, the DNA sequenced, the bones measured and cataloged. I was interviewed dozens of times, asked to tell my story, asked to explain how I had found it. I told the truth mostly. I found it, I said. It was dead when I arrived. I didn't know what had killed it. I kept the rest to myself, the parts about the Wendigo and the Skinwalker, the parts about the ancient war, the parts about the creature's final words. No one would have believed me, and I had no proof, and the Skinwalker was still out there, still hunting, still wearing the faces of the dead. The Skinwalker. I have not seen it since that night by the lake, but I know it is still out there. I feel it sometimes in the darkness between streetlights, in the shadows cast by trees, in the faces of strangers who seem too familiar, too wrong. I have learned to recognize the signs, the silence of birds, the sudden drop in temperature, the feeling of being watched by something ancient and hungry. I have learned to run when I feel those signs, to hide, to survive. But I am tired of running. I am tired of hiding. I am tired of carrying the memories of what I have seen, the weight of the deaths I witnessed, the guilt of surviving when so many others did not. I am writing this final account because I need someone to know the truth, need someone to understand that the world is darker and more terrible than the official stories admit. The Wendigo is gone, its curse broken, its souls released. The Bigfoot is dead, its ancient guardianship ended. But the Skinwalker remains, the only survivor of that terrible war, wounded but healing, hungry and hunting. It will grow strong again, will take new skins, new forms, new victims. And one day, perhaps soon, it will find me. I have moved from my cabin, left Oregon behind, tried to disappear into the crowds of the city. But I know it will find me. The Skinwalker is patient, is cunning, is relentless. It does not forget, does not forgive, does not relent. I killed its ancient enemies, broke the balance of power that had contained it for centuries. It owes me, and it will collect. I hear things at night, scratching at my window, footsteps in the hall, voices that sound like people I know, calling my name, begging me to open the door. I don't open the door. I don't answer the phone. I don't look in mirrors after dark. I have learned the wards and protections that Hastian taught me before she died. She passed 3 months after the lake battle, her ancient body finally giving out. But I know they will not hold forever. The Skinwalker is coming. It is only a matter of time. This is my final testament. If you are reading this, I am likely dead, likely taken by the creature that haunts my nights. Do not mourn for me. I have been dead since that first night in the forest, since I first saw the Wendigo's burning eyes, since I first heard the Skinwalker's chattering laugh. I have simply been waiting for my body to catch up to my spirit. Learn from my mistakes. Stay out of the deep woods. Do not investigate strange tracks or unusual cold. Do not follow screams into the darkness. The Wendigo may be gone, the Bigfoot may be dead, but there are other things in the forest, older things, hungrier things. The Skinwalker walks among us, wearing our faces, speaking with our voices, waiting for the moment when our guard is down. May you never learn what I have learned. May you never see what I have seen. May you live your life in ignorance of the ancient horrors that share this world with us, and may you die in your bed, surrounded by family, having never known the touch of frozen death or the embrace of stolen flesh. Elias Blackwood, Park Ranger, retired. Last entry. There is more I must document, more horror that I witnessed in those cursed woods. The official narrative ends with my rescue and the discovery of the Bigfoot corpse, but I know the truth extends far beyond what the authorities were willing to accept. The creatures I encountered were not isolated incidents, not random encounters in the wilderness. They were part of something larger, something older, something that has shaped the nightmares of humanity since before we learned to fear the darkness. I need to tell you about the fourth night. After the battle at the glacial lake, after the Bigfoot died and the Wendigo dissolved and the Skinwalker fled, I believed, I prayed, that the terror was over. I was found wandering on a Forest Service road 3 days after the lake confrontation, delirious, frostbitten, suffering from exposure and malnutrition. I was taken back to the hospital, where I spent another month recovering from my ordeal. The doctors said it was a miracle I survived, that my body had endured stresses that should have killed me 10 times over. They spoke of my resilience, my determination, my will to live. They did not understand that part of me had died in those woods, that the person who emerged was not the same ranger who had entered them. I had seen things that broke something fundamental in my psyche, had witnessed horrors that rewired my brain in ways the psychiatrists could not diagnose or treat. I slept with the lights on, woke screaming from dreams of frozen fingers and shifting flesh, could not bear to be in rooms with windows that faced trees. But worse than the dreams were the cravings. I found myself drawn to cold places, seeking out air conditioning, ice machines, refrigerated storage. I would stand in front of open freezers until my skin turned blue, feeling a hunger I could not name, a need for something I could not identify. The doctors thought it was post-traumatic stress, a psychological response to the freezing trauma I had experienced. They did not understand that the Wendigo had marked me, had touched me with its cursed cold, and that part of its hunger had passed into me. I fought it. I fought it every day, with prayer and willpower and psychiatric medication. But on the fourth night after my return from the lake, I lost the battle. It began with a sound, a scratching at my window, rhythmic and patient, like claws being dragged across glass. I lived in a second-floor apartment then, had moved to the city to escape the memories of the forest, and there was no way for anything to reach that window except by climbing. I told myself it was a tree branch, a bird, my imagination. I did not look. I knew, with the certainty of prey who senses the predator, that something was watching me from the darkness, something ancient and hungry and patient. The scratching continued for hours. I sat in my bed, covers pulled to my chin, eyes fixed on the window, waiting. I had a shotgun, purchased legally after my release from the hospital, for protection against the nightmares I knew were real, and I held it now, safety off, aimed at the window. I told myself I would fire if anything entered, that I would empty both barrels into whatever came through that glass. At 3:17 a.m. the scratching stopped. The silence was worse than the noise. I sat there, straining to hear anything, my heart hammering so loud I was sure it would give away my position. And then I heard it, a voice, my mother's voice calling from the window. "Elias," it said, sweet and warm and exactly as I remembered it from my childhood. "Elias, open the window, it's cold out here. Let me in, baby, I'm so cold." My mother had been dead for 15 years. I knew what it was, the Skinwalker. It had found me. It had taken my mother's form, her voice, her memory, and it was using them to lure me, to break my will, to make me open the window and invite it inside. I knew this. I understood this. And yet some part of me, the part that missed her, that still grieved her, that had never fully accepted her death, wanted to believe, wanted to open the window and see her face one more time. I did not open the window. I raised the shotgun and fired. The blast shattered the glass, tore through the screen, obliterated the shape that had been standing there. I heard a shriek, not human, not animal, something between a scream and a laugh, and I saw a shape fall away from the window, dropping to the ground below. I rushed to the window, heedless of the broken glass cutting my feet, and looked down. The street was empty. No body, no blood, no sign that anything had been there at all. But on the sidewalk, written in frost that steamed despite the summer heat, were words, "Your mother screamed when I took her." I collapsed then, fell to my knees among the broken glass, and wept. The Skinwalker had killed my mother 15 years ago, and I had never known. It had been watching me since before I was born, marking me, waiting for me to enter its territory so it could begin its game. The deaths I had witnessed, the horror I had experienced, all of it had been orchestrated, had been part of some plan I could not comprehend. I don't know how long I knelt there. When I finally rose, I knew what I had to do. I could not run anymore. The Skinwalker would find me wherever I went, would wear the faces of everyone I loved, would torment me until I broke or died. I had to face it. I had to end this. I packed a bag with supplies, food, water, ammunition, the wards and protective charms Hastian had given me. I drove north, back to the forest, back to the monument, back to the place where it had all begun. I would find the Skinwalker. I would kill it, or I would die trying. I arrived at the old quarry at sunset. The place was unchanged, the granite walls still stained with blood that would never wash away, the air still cold despite the summer heat. I could feel the Skinwalker here, could feel its presence like pressure against my mind, like the weight of 1,000 watching eyes. It was waiting for me. It had known I would come. "Elias," the voice came from everywhere and nowhere, a chorus of voices, all the people it had ever killed, all the forms it had ever worn. "Elias, why did you run? We could have been together. I could have been your mother, your father, your lover, anyone you wanted." I raised my shotgun and fired into the darkness. The blast echoed off the quarry walls, but I knew I had hit nothing. The Skinwalker was not something that could be killed with shotguns. It was not something that could be killed at all. "So angry," the voice laughed, and I saw movement at the edge of my vision, shapes shifting in the shadows. "So much fear, so much delicious, nourishing fear. Do you know how strong you have made me, Elias? Do you know how many times I have fed on your terror these past months?" I turned, trying to track the voice, trying to find a target. "Show yourself," I shouted, my voice cracking with fear and rage. "Show yourself, you coward, face me." Face you? The voice was suddenly right behind me, breath hot on my neck. I spun, firing blind, but the shotgun clicked empty. I had forgotten to reload. I wear 1,000 faces, Ranger. Which one would you like to see? It stepped into the light and I screamed. It wore my face. My own face, my own body, my own clothes, but wrong, distorted, stretched in ways that made me want to claw my own eyes out. It smiled with my mouth, and the smile went too far, splitting my face from ear to ear, revealing rows of teeth that were not mine. "We could be twins," it said in my voice, and the sound made me gag. "I could wear you, Elias, I could be you. I could go back to the city, live your life, eat your friends, sleep in your bed. No one would ever know. They would think you had recovered, had finally overcome your trauma. They would celebrate your return, and I would devour them one by one, wearing your smile." I reached for my sidearm, the Glock I had carried as a ranger, but the Skinwalker was faster. It moved like liquid, like shadow, and suddenly it was on me, its hands, my hands wrong with too many fingers, around my throat. It lifted me off the ground with impossible strength, and I felt my breath cutting off, felt my vision going dark at the edges. "SHH," it whispered, still wearing my face, my voice. "Don't struggle, it will be over soon. I will wear you well, Elias, I promise." I was dying. I knew it with the certainty of a man who has felt death's touch before. The Skinwalker was going to kill me, take my form, become me, and there was nothing I could do. My vision narrowed to a tunnel, darkness closing in, my lungs burning for air that wouldn't come. And then I heard it, a roar, a sound I had heard before in the forest in my nightmares, a sound I thought I would never hear again. The Bigfoot exploded from the shadows, massive form covered in wounds that were somehow healing, one eye still missing but the other blazing with ancient rage. It was alive. Somehow, impossibly, against all reason, it had survived, and it had followed me. It had been protecting me, watching me, guarding me from the shadows since I left the forest. The Skinwalker shrieked and dropped me, turning to face this new threat. I hit the ground gasping, crawling away, watching as the two ancient enemies faced each other once more. But the Bigfoot was not alone. Behind it, emerging from the darkness like frost spreading across a window, came the Wendigo. It too had survived, had reformed from the black water of the lake, had healed from the Skinwalker's acid. It stood beside the Bigfoot, skeletal form towering over even the massive ape, and for a moment I thought they would fight each other. They didn't. They had made an alliance, I realized, the enemy of my enemy. They turned as one on the Skinwalker, and the shapeshifter's stolen face, my face, showed something I had never seen there before, fear. "No," it hissed, backing away. "This is not how it ends. This is not the balance. We are three, always three, eternal and unchanging. You cannot destroy me." "Balance broken," the Wendigo said, and its voice was the sound of glaciers calving, of frozen tundra cracking, of ancient ice shifting in the dark. "You took too many. You grew too strong." The Bigfoot roared in agreement, and the two creatures advanced. What followed was not a battle but an execution. The Wendigo struck first, its cold so intense that the Skinwalker froze in place, literally, its stolen forms becoming rigid, locked in ice. The Bigfoot followed, massive fists hammering into the frozen form, shattering the ice, breaking the Skinwalker's borrowed bones. Again and again they struck, the Wendigo freezing, the Bigfoot breaking, working in terrible harmony to destroy the thing that had threatened the balance of their ancient war. The Skinwalker screamed, and its screams were the voices of everyone it had ever killed, everyone it had ever worn, a chorus of the dead crying out for release. Its body broke and reformed, but each time it reformed slower, weaker, smaller. The Wendigo was consuming its stolen souls, sucking them out like poison from a wound, releasing them to whatever afterlife awaited. The Bigfoot was crushing its physical form, preventing it from shifting, from escaping, from running. Finally, the Skinwalker was reduced to something small, something pitiful, a writhing mass of flesh and hate that barely held a shape. The Wendigo bent over it, mouth gaping wide, and I saw what would happen. It would consume the Skinwalker, absorb it, make it part of its endless hunger. The balance would be restored, but in the worst possible way. The Bigfoot stopped it. It placed a massive hand on the Wendigo's shoulder, and the skeletal creature paused. They looked at each other, these two ancient enemies, and I saw communication pass between them, some understanding that transcended words. The Wendigo stepped back. The Bigfoot picked up the Skinwalker, held it in both hands, and began to squeeze. The Skinwalker shrieked, but the sound was weak now, pathetic. The Bigfoot squeezed, and the Skinwalker's body began to compact, to compress, to be crushed into a smaller and smaller space. I saw bones break, saw organs rupture, saw the stolen flesh liquefy and run between the Bigfoot's fingers like oil. When it was done, when the Skinwalker was nothing but a ball of crushed meat and broken bone, no larger than a basketball, the Bigfoot turned and threw it into the quarry's depths. It hit the stone with a wet sound and did not move. The Wendigo approached the remains, and I thought it would feed, would consume what was left. Instead, it did something I did not understand. It breathed on the Skinwalker's remains, and its breath was not cold but warm, impossibly warm, like spring after winter. Where it touched, the Skinwalker's flesh began to dissolve, to break down, to return to the earth from which it had been stolen. "Released," the Wendigo said, and its voice was different now, softer, almost sad. "They are released, all of them." I understood. The Wendigo was not just destroying the Skinwalker. It was releasing the souls it had consumed, the forms it had stolen, the lives it had taken. They rose from the dissolving flesh, ghostly shapes, human and animal, rising toward the sky, free at last. When it was done, when the Skinwalker was nothing but a stain on the stone, the Wendigo turned to me. Its eye sockets no longer burned with blue fire. They were empty, hollow, almost peaceful. "The hunger," it said, "it is less now, the thief is gone, his souls. They were mine too, in a way. I consumed them, I kept them, I did not let them go." I understood. The Wendigo and the Skinwalker had been connected, bound together by the souls they consumed. When the Skinwalker took a life, the Wendigo fed on the fear. When the Wendigo froze a victim, the Skinwalker sometimes took their form. They were parasites on each other, competitors and collaborators in an eternal dance of death. "WILLU, will you stop?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Will you stop killing?" The Wendigo looked at me for a long time, its hollow eyes seeming to see into my soul. "Cannot stop," it said finally. "The hunger is eternal, but I can choose." It turned away, walked toward the quarry's edge. The Bigfoot watched it go, and I saw something in the ape's eye, respect, perhaps, or recognition. The Wendigo paused at the edge, looked back once, and then stepped off, falling into the darkness below. I never saw it again. Some say it still walks the northern forests, feeding on the isolated and the lost, but more slowly now, more carefully, taking only those who have already given up on life. Others say it found a way to end itself, to finally stop the hunger. I don't know which is true. I only know that I never felt its cold again, never woke to frost on my windows, never heard it scream in the night. The Bigfoot remained. It turned to me, its one eye regarding me with an expression I could not read. It approached, slowly, carefully, and I did not run. I had seen this creature fight, had seen it defend me, had seen it end the Skinwalker's threat. Whatever it wanted, I would give. It stopped an arm's length away and reached out. I flinched, but its touch was gentle, massive fingers brushing my forehead, leaving a streak of blood and dirt. Then it turned and walked away, disappearing into the forest, and I knew that our paths would not cross again. I was found the next morning by hikers, wandering the quarry in a daze. I was taken to the hospital, treated for exposure and shock, questioned by police and FBI and journalists. I told them what I had seen, all of it, the whole truth. They did not believe me. They wrote it off as delusion, trauma, the ramblings of a broken mind. But the evidence was there if they had chosen to look. The stain on the quarry floor where the Skinwalker had dissolved. The frost patterns that never melted, even in the summer sun. The massive tracks that led away from the site, disappearing into the forest. They chose not to see. They chose to believe in bears and exposure and mental illness. I am writing this from a small cabin in the mountains, far from civilization, far from the places where the Skinwalker once hunted. The Wendigo is gone, the Bigfoot has retreated to whatever deep places it calls home, and the Skinwalker is destroyed. The ancient war is over. But I am still here, still marked, still carrying the memories of what I witnessed. I am old now, older than my years, my body broken by cold and trauma. I will not live much longer, and when I die, I wonder if I will see them again, the three ancient enemies, waiting for me in whatever afterlife awaits. I hope not. I have seen enough horror for 10 lifetimes. I have witnessed things no human should see, survived things no human should survive. I am ready for peace. To whoever finds this, believe what I have written. The monsters are real. The Wendigo walks the winter woods hungry and cold. The Skinwalker wears the faces of the dead, waiting to lure the living. The Bigfoot guards the ancient places, fierce and alone. They are out there in the forests of the world, fighting their eternal war, and any human who crosses their path is simply collateral damage, simply food, simply forgotten. Stay out of the woods. Stay safe. And if you ever feel the temperature drop suddenly on a warm night, if you ever hear a voice calling your name from the darkness, if you ever see a shape moving in the trees that seems too tall, too thin, too wrong, run. Run and don't look back. Elias Blackwood, Final Testament. Postscript: The Final Days. I write this addendum from my deathbed. The cancer has spread through my body, consuming me from within, and I have days left, perhaps hours. The doctors have given up, the priests have prayed, and I am alone with my memories and my pain. But I am not afraid of death, not anymore. I have faced worse than death. I have faced the Wendigo, the Skinwalker, the Bigfoot. I have seen the darkness and survived. Death is just another journey, another path, another adventure. What I fear is what comes after. Not heaven or hell, but the possibility that I will see them again. The three ancient enemies waiting for me in whatever lies beyond. The Wendigo with its endless hunger, the Skinwalker with its 1,000 faces, the Bigfoot with its ancient rage. I dream of them every night now. The dreams are clearer than ever, more vivid, more real. I see the Wendigo standing at the foot of my bed, its hollow eye sockets staring into mine, its breath cold against my skin. I see the Skinwalker wearing my dead mother's face, smiling with too many teeth. I see the Bigfoot watching from the forest, its one eye gleaming with something that might be intelligence or might be hunger. They are waiting for me. I know it with the certainty of a man who has spent his life in the woods, who has learned to read the signs. They know I am dying. They can sense it, smell it, feel it. They are gathering, preparing, hungry for my soul. But I will not go quietly. I have prepared as best I can. The cabin is warded with salt and iron and ancient prayers. I have silver bullets blessed by a priest who knew the truth. I have fire, holy water, every weapon I could gather. If they come for me before the end, I will fight. I will die fighting just as I lived fighting. And if they wait, if they let me die naturally, if they come for my soul in the afterlife, I will fight there too. I will not be consumed. I will not be worn. I will not be destroyed. I am Elias Blackwood, and I faced the monsters and survived. I will face them again, as many times as necessary, until I find peace. The Wolf Women of Mobile. My name is Detective Samuel Sam Cortez, and I have been with the Mobile Police Department for 23 years. I have worked homicides for 18 of those years, and I have seen things that would break most men. I have seen the aftermath of domestic disputes turned deadly, of gang violence, of random killings that made no sense and never would. I have seen bodies in every condition imaginable, shot, stabbed, strangled, burned, drowned. I have developed what my wife called a cop's stomach, the ability to look at horror without flinching, to catalog atrocities without letting them touch my soul. I was wrong about that last part. The things I saw during the Wolf Woman case touched my soul. They scarred it. They changed me in ways I am only now beginning to understand, and I know that I will carry those scars to my grave. It began on October 14th, 2 weeks before Halloween, when the nights were growing longer and the air in Mobile carried the first hints of autumn. I was working the night shift, reviewing case files in my cramped office at the precinct, when the call came in. Body found in Bienville Square, the historic park in the heart of downtown. Homeless man, apparent animal attack. Officers on scene requesting detective assistance. Animal attacks in downtown Mobile were rare but not unheard of. We had coyotes that came in from the outskirts, packs of feral dogs, the occasional alligator that wandered up from the bay. I didn't think much of it as I drove to the scene, didn't prepare myself for anything beyond the usual gruesome spectacle of a body mauled by wildlife. I was not prepared for what I found. Bienville Square was cordoned off, blue police tape strung between trees, uniformed officers keeping back the inevitable crowd of onlookers that gathered at every crime scene. The body was in the center of the square, near the famous old oaks that had stood since before the Civil War. I could see it from the edge of the tape, covered by a sheet that did little to hide the shape beneath. The sheet was too small, I realized. It didn't cover everything. I approached the body, flashing my badge at the officer on duty, and knelt beside the coroner, Dr. Angela Wright. She was a professional, had been working Mobile's dead for longer than I had been working its crimes, and I had never seen her disturbed by anything. She was disturbed now. Her face was pale, her hands shaking as she held her recorder. "Sam," she said, not looking up, "you need to see this, but I warn you, it's bad." She pulled back the sheet and I saw. The body was that of a homeless man, later identified as Robert Bobby Tanner, age 54, a veteran who had fallen through the cracks of the VA system and ended up on the streets. He had been sleeping in the square that night, using one of the benches as a bed, wrapped in a blanket against the cooling autumn air. The blanket was gone now, so was most of Bobby Tanner. His throat had been torn out, not cut but torn, ragged flesh hanging in strips, the wound gaping like a second mouth. But that was not what made Angela pale, not what made the experienced officers look away. It was what had been done to the rest of him. His chest had been opened, ribs cracked and spread like the petals of some obscene flower. The organs within had been removed, carefully, surgically, with precision that suggested knowledge of anatomy. The heart was gone. The liver was gone. The kidneys were gone. What remained was arranged in a pattern, laid out with deliberate care around the empty cavity of his torso. And his face. His face was frozen in an expression of such profound terror that I had to look away. His eyes were wide open, staring at nothing, the pupils dilated to black pools. His mouth was open in a scream that had never been uttered, lips drawn back from teeth in a rictus of horror. And his skin was covered in marks. Not wounds exactly, but impressions, as if something had pressed against him, something that had left an imprint in the flesh. "Coyotes," I managed, though I knew the answer. "No," Angela said quietly. "No animal did this. Look at the edges of the wounds, Sam. They're too clean. An animal tears, this was cut. And the organs. Someone who knew what they were doing removed them. Someone with medical training or what?" She looked at me then, her eyes meeting mine, and I saw fear there. Real fear. Or someone who has done this before, many times. I examined the body more closely, forcing myself to look past the horror and see the evidence. She was right. The wounds were precise, surgical. The ribs had been cracked at specific points, spread with tools or tremendous strength, and the organs removed with care. The heart, in particular, showed signs of having been removed while still beating. The vessels were severed cleanly, not torn, suggesting the organ had been extracted with speed and skill. I looked at the marks on the skin. They were everywhere, covering the chest, the arms, the legs. They looked like fingerprints, but wrong, too large, too long. The fingers that had made them had been twice the length of a human finger, with spacing that suggested too many digits. "Footprints?" I asked. Angela shook her head. "None that make sense. There are marks in the soil, but they're not right. Come see." She led me to the edge of the clearing, to a patch of disturbed earth near one of the oaks. And there, pressed into the soil, were the tracks. They were humanoid, I could see that immediately. 2 feet bipedal stance. But the proportions were wrong. The feet were too long, too narrow, and the toes. There were too many toes. 7 on each foot, pressed deep into the earth by weight that must have been tremendous. And the stride length measured between the tracks suggested a creature standing nearly 7 feet tall. "What the hell?" I breathed. "There's more," Angela said. She led me to another patch of ground near where the body had been found. Here the tracks were different, smaller, narrower, and accompanied by another set. These tracks were clearly human, barefoot, small, female from the size and shape. They walked alongside the larger tracks, matching stride for stride as if the two had been together, hunting as a pair. "The victim was alone," I said, thinking aloud. "Witnesses said he was sleeping alone on the bench. No one reported seeing anyone with him." "I know," Angela said, "but these tracks, they're fresh, Sam, made tonight. Whatever made them was here when he died." I stood up, looking around the square. The old oaks loomed overhead, their branches creating a canopy of darkness that hid the stars. The air smelled of blood and something else, something musky and wild, like animal musk but stronger, more pungent. And underlying it all, the faint scent of perfume. Jasmine, I thought, or something like it. "We need to search the area," I said. "Whatever did this might still be nearby." We searched until dawn. We found more tracks, leading away from the square toward the old Mobile cemetery, where the above-ground tombs created a labyrinth of stone and shadow. The tracks went in but did not come out, or at least we could not find where they emerged. The large tracks ended at the cemetery gate, as if the creature had simply vanished. The smaller tracks, the human tracks, continued deeper into the cemetery, winding between the tombs before they too disappeared. We found blood on some of the tombs, smeared in patterns that might have been deliberate or might have been the result of something brushing against the stone. We found fur, caught on the iron fence, gray and coarse and definitely not human. We found a scrap of fabric, caught on a tomb's corner that looked like it might have come from a dress. Red silk, expensive, stained with blood. By the time the sun rose, I knew we were dealing with something beyond my experience. The precision of the wounds, the strangeness of the tracks, the evidence of a partnership between something human and something definitely not. I had worked ritual killings before, had seen the aftermath of cult activity and occult practices. This was different. This was older. This was something that predated human civilization. I went home that morning as the city woke, as commuters passed by Enville Square unaware of the horror that had occurred there hours before. I showered, scrubbing the smell of death from my skin, but I could not scrub away the images. Bobby Tanner's face, frozen in terror, the careful arrangement of his organs, the tracks that led nowhere, the scent of jasmine and musk. I slept fitfully, dreaming of running through dark streets, something pursuing me, something that ran on too many legs and smelled of blood and flowers. I woke to the sound of my phone ringing, the dispatcher's voice telling me there had been another killing. Same MO, same location. By Enville Square, again. I drove faster than I should have, siren blaring, heart hammering. 2 killings in one night in the same location was either the work of a brazen killer or something so confident it didn't fear capture. Either way, we were dealing with a monster. The second body was near the first, less than 50 yards away under a different oak. This time the victim was a woman, identified as Patricia Patty O'Malley, age 38, a nurse at the University of South Alabama Medical Center. She had been walking home from a late shift, taking a shortcut through the square when she was attacked. She had suffered the same fate as Bobby Tanner. Throat torn out, chest opened, organs removed with surgical precision. Her heart was missing. Her face was frozen in the same expression of terminal horror, and her skin bore the same marks, the same impressions of two long fingers. But there were differences. Patty O'Malley had fought back. Her fingernails were torn, blood and skin beneath them that would later prove to be non-human. She had scratches on her arms, defensive wounds, where she had tried to fend off her attacker. And she had managed to tear something from her attacker's clothing, a button, red silk, matching the fabric we had found at the first scene. "It's escalating," Angela said as we examined the body. The first victim was asleep, unaware, easy prey. This one was awake, aware, fought back. Our killer is getting bolder, or hungrier. "Or both," I said. I was looking at the tracks. The same pattern, large, inhuman prints alongside smaller human prints, walking together, hunting together. But this time there was something else. Blood trails. The smaller tracks, the human tracks, were accompanied by droplets of blood, spaced evenly, suggesting a bleeding wound. "She heard it," I said. "The human one, she got a piece of it." "Then we have DNA," Angela said. "If we can match it." "We can find our killer," I finished. But we couldn't match it. The DNA was human, that much was clear, but it didn't match anyone in the system. And when the lab tried to sequence it fully, they encountered something strange. The sample was contaminated, they said, degraded, showing markers that didn't make sense. There were sequences that looked canine, lupin even, mixed with the human DNA in ways that shouldn't have been possible. "It's a chimera," the lab tech told me, confused. "Like two different creatures mixed together, but that's not possible in a single individual. It would have to be a hybrid," I said, understanding dawning. "Something that was both human and wolf." The lab tech laughed, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. I began to research. I spent hours in the precinct's library, which was mostly a storage room for old case files, looking for precedents. I searched for animal attacks in Mobile's history, for ritual killings, for anything that might explain what we were dealing with. And I found it in a file from 1954 when my grandfather had been a young patrolman. The Wolf Woman. That was what they called her. A killer who had terrorized Mobile for 3 months in the autumn of 1954, attacking 7 people before disappearing. The victims had been killed in the same manner as ours. Throats torn, chests opened, organs removed. The last victim had survived long enough to describe her attacker. A woman with wolf's eyes and too many teeth, who ran on 2 legs but moved like an animal, accompanied by a creature that was all wolf but stood like a man. The case had never been solved. The killings had stopped as suddenly as they began, and the file had been buried, classified, forgotten. My grandfather had been sworn to secrecy, threatened with dismissal if he spoke of what he had seen. He had taken the secret to his grave. But not before telling my father, one night when he was drunk and afraid. And my father had told me, years later when I had first made detective, a warning passed down through generations. If you ever see tracks with too many toes, if you ever smell jasmine where jasmine shouldn't grow, if you ever hear a woman singing in the woods, run. Don't investigate. Don't follow, just run. I had thought it was a ghost story, a family legend, something to scare children. Now I knew better. The wolf woman was real, she had returned, and she was hunting again. That night I did something I had never done before. I went to the old Mobile cemetery alone, after dark, armed with nothing but my service weapon and a flashlight. I told myself I was investigating, following up on the tracks that had disappeared there. The truth was darker. I needed to know if she was real, needed to see her with my own eyes to confirm that the stories were true. The cemetery was ancient by American standards, established in 1819 when Mobile was still part of Spanish Florida. The above-ground tombs, built in the Creole style, created a city of the dead, a maze of stone and iron where the wealthy and powerful of old Mobile rested in eternal silence. Spanish moss hung from the oaks, creating curtains of gray that moved in the night breeze like ghostly fingers. I entered through the main gate, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The tracks had led here, I reminded myself. Whatever had killed Bobby Tanner and Patty O'Malley had come through this gate, might still be here. I walked slowly, carefully, my gun drawn, my senses hyper-alert. The cemetery was silent, too silent. No insects chirped. No night birds called. Just the sound of my own breathing, my own footsteps, and the distant hum of the city beyond the walls. I followed the path the tracks had taken, winding between the tombs, reading names that went back 2 centuries. Dubois, Lefebvre, Delacroix. The old French families, the Spanish, the English, all mixed together in death as they had been in life. The moon was full, casting silver light through the moss, creating shadows that seemed to move. I kept seeing things at the edge of my vision, shapes that vanished when I turned my head, movements in the darkness that might have been wind or might have been something watching me. I found the place where the tracks had disappeared. It was a tomb, larger than the others, built in the Egyptian Revival style popular in the 1840s. The name on the door was worn almost smooth by time, but I could still make it out. Lupo. Italian, I thought, or maybe Spanish. The tomb door was slightly ajar. Not open exactly, but not fully closed, as if someone had recently passed through. I approached it, telling myself I was being foolish, that there was no such thing as monsters, that I would find nothing but dust and bones inside. I reached for the door, my hands shaking despite my best efforts to remain calm. And then I heard it, singing. A woman's voice, high and clear, singing in a language I didn't recognize. It came from inside the tomb, or perhaps from deeper in the cemetery, the acoustics making it impossible to tell. The melody was beautiful, haunting, like a lullaby or a love song, but underneath the beauty there was something else, something predatory, something hungry. "Hello," I called, my voice cracking. "Mobile police, come out with your hands up." The singing stopped. For a long moment there was silence. Then a laugh, a woman's laugh, low and throaty like a growl. "Detective," the voice said, and it was the voice from the singing, rich and musical, but with an undertone that was not human. "I've been waiting for you." The tomb door swung open, and she emerged. I say she, but I am not sure that is the right word. The thing that stepped from the tomb was female, yes, in the shape of its body, the curve of its hips, the swell of its breasts, but it was not a woman, not entirely. She was tall, nearly 6 feet, with a body that was simultaneously emaciated and powerful, muscles visible beneath skin that was the wrong color. Gray, I realized. Her skin was gray, like a wolf's fur, with darker patches around her eyes and mouth. Her eyes were yellow like a wolf's, with pupils that were not round but slit like a cat's. And her mouth. When she smiled, I saw teeth that were too many and too sharp, canines that extended past her lower lip. She was naked, but covered in something that might have been fur or might have been hair, long and gray and coarse, growing in patches across her body. Her hands were wrong, I saw, the fingers too long, too many, 7 on each hand, ending in claws that clicked together as she moved. And she was beautiful, terribly, terrifyingly beautiful. The kind of beauty that made you want to approach her, made you want to touch her, made you forget that she was a monster. "You found my tracks," she said, stepping closer. "Good, I wanted you to find them, I wanted you to come." I raised my gun, my hands shaking. "Stop right there. You're under arrest for the murders of Robert Tanner and Patricia O'Malley. Put your hands where I can see them." She laughed again, and the sound made my blood run cold. "Arrest me? Little detective, do you think your laws apply to me? Do you think your gun can hurt me? I am older than this city, older than this country. I walked these woods when they belonged to the Choctaw, when the Spanish were still sailing across the sea." I said stop, I repeated, but my voice was weaker now. She was right. The gun felt like a toy in my hands, useless against the thing before me. "Put the gun down, detective," she said softly, and her voice was like honey, like warmth, like everything I had ever wanted. "I don't want to hurt you. I want to show you something, something wonderful, something that will change your life." I don't know why I obeyed. Some power in her voice, some magic in her eyes, some primal response to the predator's call. I lowered the gun, let it hang at my side. I was hers now, I knew. She could kill me whenever she chose. "Good boy," she purred, approaching. She was close enough to touch now, close enough for me to smell her. Jasmine and musk, the same scent from the crime scenes, but stronger now, overwhelming. "Now come with me. I want to show you where I live, where we can be together." She took my hand, her fingers, too long, too cold, but soft, so soft, wrapping around mine. And she led me deeper into the cemetery, into the darkness, into the place where the old tombs gave way to older graves, where the dead from Mobile's earliest days rested in unmarked holes. I should have run, should have fought, should have screamed, but I didn't. I followed her, hypnotized by her beauty, paralyzed by her presence, helpless as a mouse before a snake. She led me to a mausoleum larger than the others, half buried in earth and time. The door was open, and from within came sounds, whimpering, growling, the rustle of movement. I smelled blood, fresh blood, and something else. Something that smelled like fear. "My family," the wolf woman said, gesturing to the darkness within. "Come meet them." She pushed me forward into the darkness, and I saw. The mausoleum was not empty. It had been converted into a den, a nest, a home for creatures that should not exist. The floor was covered in fur and bones and rotting meat. The walls were lined with shelves that held jars, jars of organs, I realized, hearts and livers and kidneys preserved in some clear fluid. And in the center of the room, chained to the walls, were creatures that might once have been human. They were naked, emaciated, covered in scratches and bite marks. Their eyes were wild, their mouths open in silent screams. They had been fed upon, I realized, kept alive as a larder, as food for the wolf woman and her kind. Some were old, had probably been here for months, years. Some were fresh, their wounds still weeping, their terror still fresh. And among them, not chained but crouched, was the other creature, the one from the tracks, the one that walked like a man but was all wolf. It was huge, standing nearly 7 feet tall on its hind legs, with a body that was powerfully muscled beneath gray fur. Its head was wolf-like, elongated with ears that pricked forward and eyes that glowed yellow in the darkness. But its forelimbs ended in hands, not paws, hands with 7 fingers that clutched and grasped at the air. And its posture, its stance, was human. It watched me with intelligence, with awareness, with something that might have been amusement. "My mate," the wolf woman said, gesturing to the creature. "The lupo, the last of his kind, as I am the last of mine. We are all that remains of the old world, detective. The world before humans, before cities, before light drove back the darkness." "You're monsters," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. "We are predators," she corrected. "As humans are predators. You kill deer, kill cattle, kill each other. We simply hunt different prey. Those people," I gestured to the chained humans, "they're innocent. They haven't done anything." "They are food," she said simply. "As you will be if you disappoint me. But I have other plans for you, detective. I have watched you. I have seen your strength, your determination, your refusal to give up. You are interesting." She approached me, her hand soft, cold, wrong, touching my face. "I could make you like me," she whispered. "I could give you power, strength, immortality. You could hunt with us, feed with us, live forever in the darkness." "No," I said, finding strength from somewhere, pushing her hand away. "I'm a cop. I protect people, I don't eat them." She stared at me for a long moment, her yellow eyes unreadable. Then she smiled, showing those terrible teeth. "Then you will die," she said, "and your death will not be quick." She gestured to the lupo, and the creature rose, unfolding itself to its full height. It approached me, growling, and I raised my gun again, but I knew it was useless. The creature was too fast, too strong. It would kill me before I could fire. But then, salvation. From outside the mausoleum I heard voices, human voices, flashlights cutting through the darkness. My backup, I realized. I had told dispatch where I was going before I entered the cemetery. They had followed, had found me. "Police, freeze!" The voice was Officer Jackson, a young patrolman with more courage than sense. He appeared in the doorway, gun drawn, and behind him were 3 more officers, all armed, all ready. The wolf woman hissed, a sound like steam escaping from a ruptured pipe, and the lupo turned, moving with terrible speed toward the officers. "No," I shouted, raising my gun and firing. I emptied my clip into the lupo, shots hitting its chest, its head, its throat. It staggered, stumbled, fell to its knees, but it did not die. It turned to look at me, its yellow eyes meeting mine, and I saw something there. Respect, or perhaps just hunger. Then it rose again, wounds already healing, and it was on Officer Jackson before the young man could fire. I saw claws flash, saw blood spray, saw Jackson fall with his throat torn out, his chest opened, his organs spilled across the ancient stones. The other officers fired, but the lupo moved too fast, darting between them, slashing, tearing. Officer Martinez went down, then Officer Chen, then Officer Williams. All dead in seconds, their bodies arranged in a pattern around the mausoleum entrance, their organs removed with surgical precision, their faces frozen in the same expression of terror I had seen on Bobby Tanner and Patty O'Malley. I was alone with the wolf woman and her mate, surrounded by the dead. The wolf woman turned to me, her beautiful face twisted in a snarl. "You brought them here," she accused. "You led them to my home." "They followed me," I gasped. "They were worried, they wanted to help." "And now they are meat," she said, "as you will be, but first." She gestured to the chained humans, the ones who were still alive. "First, you will watch. You will see what happens to those who defy me." The lupo approached the nearest prisoner, a young woman who couldn't have been more than 20, her eyes wide with terror, her mouth open in a scream that wouldn't come. The creature bent over her, and I saw its mouth open, saw those terrible teeth, and I knew what was coming. "No," I screamed, lunging forward. I still had my gun, empty but heavy, and I swung it at the lupo's head. The impact was solid, satisfying, and the creature staggered, turning its attention to me. The wolf woman laughed. "Brave little detective, so brave, so foolish." The lupo advanced on me and I backed away, fumbling for my spare magazine. I found it, slammed it home, raised the gun. But the creature was too fast. It was on me before I could fire, claws raking across my chest, opening wounds that burned like fire. I fell, dropping the gun, feeling my blood soak into the ancient stones. "Enough," the wolf woman said. "He is interesting, I want him alive for now." The lupo backed off, and I lay there, bleeding, dying, surrounded by the dead. The wolf woman approached, looking down at me with those terrible yellow eyes. "You will live, detective," she said. "For now, I have use for you. But mark my words, if you cross me again, if you bring more of your kind to my home, I will not be merciful. I will destroy everything you love, your wife, your children, your city, everything." She knelt beside me, her cold hand touching my face again. "Now sleep. When you wake, you will remember only what I choose for you to remember. You will forget this place, these people, what you have seen. You will think your officers were killed by an animal, a bear perhaps, or a pack of dogs, and you will leave me alone to hunt in peace until the hunger takes me again." Her eyes met mine, and I felt her power wash over me, felt my memories being rewritten, felt my mind being violated. I fought with everything I had, but she was too strong, too ancient, too powerful. "Sleep," she commanded, and I slept. I woke the next morning in Bienville Square, lying on a bench, covered in dew. My chest was bandaged, my wounds treated, though I had no memory of how. My gun was in its holster, my badge in my pocket. I sat up, confused, my mind foggy, trying to remember. I remembered going to the cemetery, remembered the tracks, remembered. Nothing after that, just darkness. I made my way to the precinct, where I learned that 4 officers had been killed the night before in Mobile Cemetery. Animal attack, the coroner said. Wild dogs, perhaps, or a bear that had wandered into the city. The bodies had been badly mauled, organs consumed, and the killer had never been found. I didn't believe it. Something in me, some instinct that had survived the wolf woman's memory wipe, told me that wasn't right. I went to the cemetery, looked at the scene, saw the blood on the stones, and I felt something. Terror, recognition, but I couldn't remember why. I went home to my wife, held her tight, told her I loved her. She asked why I was shaking, why I had tears in my eyes. I couldn't tell her. I didn't know. That night I dreamed of a woman with wolf's eyes, singing in the darkness. And when I woke, there was jasmine on my pillow, though no jasmine grew within miles of our home. The wolf woman had marked me. She owned me. And I knew, with a certainty that came from somewhere deeper than memory, that she would call on me again, that I was not free, would never be free until one of us was dead. This is my story. This is my warning. The wolf woman of Mobile walks again, hunting the streets of my city, feeding on the innocent. And I am powerless to stop her, bound by her magic, controlled by her will. If you are reading this, it means I am dead. It means she has finally tired of me, finally consumed me, finally added me to her collection of organs and terror. And it means she is still out there, still hunting, still hungry. Do not go to Mobile Cemetery after dark. Do not follow strange tracks with too many toes. Do not listen to women singing in the night, no matter how beautiful the song. And if you ever meet a woman with yellow eyes and too many teeth, run. Run and don't look back. Detective Samuel Cortez, Mobile Police Department. The nightmare did not end with that first encounter. It was only beginning. In the weeks that followed, as my wounds healed and my memories remained locked behind a wall of the wolf woman's making, the killings continued. She hunted through the streets of Mobile, and I was powerless to stop her, bound by her magic, unable to even remember that she existed. I would wake each morning with the taste of jasmine in my mouth, with scratches on my body that I couldn't explain, with the feeling that something terrible had happened but no memory of what. I would go to work, investigate the new killings, write reports about animal attacks and ritual slayings, never connecting them to the creature who controlled my mind. The deaths were mounting. By the end of October, 12 people had died in similar circumstances, throats torn, chests opened, organs removed. The press had begun calling it the Mobile Ripper case, comparing it to Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer. The FBI had been called in, forming a task force with local law enforcement. I was part of that task force, investigating my own imprisonment, hunting a killer I couldn't remember. The wolf woman was clever. She never killed in the same place twice, never left evidence that could be traced, never allowed herself to be seen by witnesses who would live to tell the tale. She hunted the homeless, the isolated, the ones who wouldn't be missed. And when she did hunt someone who would be missed, someone with family and friends who would search for them, she made sure their bodies were found quickly, staged to look like animal attacks, the ritual elements disguised as the work of scavengers. But I was starting to remember. In dreams, at first, fragments of truth that slipped through the wolf woman's mental blocks. I would see yellow eyes in the darkness. I would hear singing that made me want to follow. I would wake up with my hands around my wife's throat, having nearly strangled her in my sleep, my mind trying to act out the wolf woman's commands. My wife, Maria, beautiful Maria, who I had loved for 20 years, who had borne my children, who had stood by me through every horror my job had shown me. She was the first to notice that something was wrong, the first to realize that I was not myself. She found the scratches on my chest, the ones that hadn't healed, the ones that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. She smelled the jasmine on my clothes, though I never wore cologne. She saw the way I would stare at the darkness, my eyes unfocused, my mouth moving in silent conversation with someone who wasn't there. "Sam," she asked me one night as I sat in our living room staring at the shadows cast by the streetlights, "what's happening to you? What's wrong?" I tried to tell her. I tried to explain about the cemetery, about the wolf woman, about the creature called Lupo. but the words wouldn't come. Something in my mind, some barrier the wolf woman had erected, prevented me from speaking the truth. All I could say was, "I don't know, I can't remember." She held me that night, and I wept in her arms, terrified of something I couldn't name, mourning something I had lost but couldn't identify. The next night, the wolf woman came for me. I was sleeping when I heard her voice calling from the street below. "Sam," she sang, and the sound was like honey, like poison, like everything I had ever wanted and feared. "Sam, come to me." I rose from bed without waking Maria, walked down the stairs, opened the door, stepped into the night. I was sleepwalking or something like it, my body moving without my conscious control, guided by her will, her voice, her power. She waited for me on the sidewalk, standing under the streetlight, her beauty terrible in the orange glow. She wore clothes now, a red dress that might have been silk, that matched the fabric we had found at the first crime scenes. Her hair was long and gray, her eyes yellow and gleaming, her smile showing teeth that were too sharp. "My detective," she said, taking my hand. "You have been fighting me, trying to remember. I warned you what would happen if you defied me." I didn't mean. I started, but she silenced me with a look. "You didn't mean," she repeated, her voice cold. "You never mean, but you do. You always do, and now you must be punished." She led me to a car, a stolen vehicle, and we drove through the sleeping city to the old industrial district, where the warehouses and factories had been abandoned for decades. This was where she hunted now, I realized, where she took victims who wouldn't be found for days, weeks, months. We stopped at a warehouse, boarded up and rusted, the windows broken and the doors chained. She led me inside through the darkness to a room where the lupo waited. The creature had grown since I last saw it, or perhaps it had simply been holding back before. It stood nearly 8 feet tall now, its body corded with muscle, its fur matted with blood and worse things. It crouched over a body, feeding, and when it looked up at me, its muzzle was red, its teeth dripping gore. The victim was still alive. I could see that, see the chest still rising and falling, see the eyes still moving, still aware. It was a young man, probably homeless, someone who had sought shelter in the warehouse and found death instead. His throat was torn but not severed, a deliberate wound designed to keep him conscious, keep him feeling, keep him terrified as he was consumed. "Watch," the wolf woman commanded, forcing me to my knees. "Watch what happens to those who displease me." The lupo returned to its meal and I watched, helpless, paralyzed, as the creature ate the young man alive. It started with the legs, tearing away flesh in strips, cracking bone to get at the marrow. The victim screamed, a sound I will hear until the day I die, and the wolf woman laughed, her musical voice twisted into something cruel. "His fear is delicious," she said, her hand on my shoulder, her nails digging into my flesh. "Can you taste it, detective? Can you feel his terror? This is what I feed on more than meat. This is what sustains me." I wanted to look away, wanted to close my eyes, wanted to die rather than watch. But she held me in place, her power overriding my will, forcing my eyes to see, my mind to record, my soul to bear witness. The lupo moved up the body, consuming the abdomen, the organs, the heart still beating as it was torn from the chest. The victim's screams grew weaker, then stopped, his body finally giving up, his mind finally releasing him from the horror. But the wolf woman wasn't done. She approached the body, now still and cooling, and she began to change. Her form shifted, her gray skin becoming smoother, more human. Her teeth retracted, becoming normal, white, perfect. Her eyes shifted from yellow to brown, warm and inviting. Within moments, she was beautiful, fully human, a woman who could walk through any crowd without attracting attention. Except for the blood. Her mouth was red with it, her hands stained, her dress soaked. She looked like she had bathed in gore, and her smile was still too wide, still too hungry. "Now," she said, turning to me, "you will feed." "What?" I managed, my voice a croak. "You will feed," she repeated. "You are mine, detective, Mine to command, mine to use, mine to transform. And tonight you will take the first step toward becoming like me. You will eat." She gestured to the body, to the remains of the young man the lupo had devoured. "There is still meat, still blood. You will consume it. You will join us." "No," I said, finding strength from somewhere, from the memory of my wife, my children, my humanity. "I'm not a monster, I'm a cop. I won't." "You will," she said, and her voice was steel now, hard and cold. "Or your wife will take your place, your children, everyone you love. I will hunt them one by one, and I will make you watch. I will force you to participate. You will hold them down while the lupo feeds. You will taste their flesh. And then when they are gone, when you have nothing left, I will kill you too, but not quickly, never quickly." She knelt beside me, her human face inches from mine, her breath hot and metallic. "Choose, detective. Feed or watch your family die." I chose. God help me, I chose. I approached the body, my stomach heaving, my mind screaming in protest, and I can't write it. I can't put it into words. What I did that night, what I was forced to do, what I became in those moments of horror. It is enough to say that I fed, that I consumed, that I took into myself the flesh of an innocent man, and in doing so, lost something that can never be recovered. The wolf woman watched, smiling, as I destroyed my humanity bite by bite. When I was done, when the body was reduced to bones and the bones were being cracked by the lupo for marrow, she embraced me, her bloody body pressed against mine, and she whispered in my ear, "You are mine now, detective, body and soul. You have eaten of the forbidden flesh, and you are bound to me forever." She was wrong. I was still bound, yes, still controlled, still unable to resist her commands. But something in me, some core of self that she hadn't reached, remained intact. I had done what she forced me to do, but I had not become her. I was still Samuel Cortez, still a cop, still a man who wanted to protect the innocent rather than prey on them. I would find a way to fight her. I swore it that night, as I vomited in the warehouse's filthy bathroom, as I scrubbed the blood from my skin with industrial soap that burned like acid. I would find a way to break her hold, to remember the truth, to hunt her as she had hunted me. It took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of research, of searching, of reaching out to people who knew about things that shouldn't exist. I found them eventually. A network of hunters, people who had encountered the supernatural and lived to tell the tale. They called themselves the Order of the Silver Stake, though they admitted the name was melodramatic and outdated. They were scholars, warriors, survivors, people who had dedicated their lives to fighting the darkness. I met with them in secret, telling no one where I was going, who I was meeting. They gathered in an old church outside Mobile, a decommissioned building that had been converted into a library and armory. There were a dozen of them, men and women of all ages, all backgrounds, united by their knowledge of the truth. Their leader was a woman named Dr. Elena Vasquez, a folklorist from the University of Alabama who had spent 30 years studying the supernatural. She was in her 60s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, with a scar that ran from her left temple to her jaw, a souvenir from an encounter with something she refused to name. "The wolf woman," she said when I described my experiences, "also called the Loopgaru, the Raugaru, the wolf witch. There have been sightings throughout the Gulf Coast for centuries, going back to the French colonial period. The Choctaw had stories about her. The Spanish feared her. She is old, detective, very old, possibly immortal." "How do I kill her?" I asked. Vasquez shook her head. "You don't. No one has ever killed a wolf witch. The best you can do is bind her, trap her, imprison her in a place where she cannot hunt. But that requires power, knowledge, and sacrifice." "I'll do whatever it takes," I said. "You say that now," Vasquez said softly, "but you don't understand what sacrifice means. To bind a creature like the wolf woman, you must offer something precious, something she wants, something she will accept in exchange for her freedom." "Like what?" Vasquez looked at me for a long moment, her eyes sad. "A life, detective. A human life freely given. The wolf woman feeds on death. If you offer her a substitute, a willing sacrifice, she might agree to leave the city to hunt elsewhere to spare the innocent. "I'll do it," I said immediately. "I'll sacrifice myself." "No," Vasquez said firmly. "She already owns you. Your sacrifice would mean nothing. It must be someone she doesn't control, someone whose death would be a true loss." I understood then what she was suggesting. "No, absolutely not. I'm not sacrificing an innocent person." "Then you have no choice," Vasquez said. "You must continue to serve her, to hunt for her, to feed her, until she grows bored and kills you. Or until she decides to transform you fully, to make you her mate, replacing the lupo. There's no other way." Vasquez hesitated. "There is one possibility, but it is dangerous, uncertain, and may kill you as surely as the wolf woman would." "Tell me." "The wolf woman controls you through your blood," Vasquez explained. "She tasted you when she first captured you, or fed you her blood, or both. This created a connection, a bond that she uses to control your mind. If we can sever that bond, break the connection, you would be free." "How?" "Bloodletting," Vasquez said. "Complete transfusion. We drain your blood and replace it with donor blood. If we remove every drop of your infected blood, the connection should break. But you may die. The process is dangerous, and even if you survive, there's no guarantee it will work. The wolf woman's magic is ancient, powerful. It may have rooted deeper than your blood. It may be in your soul." "I'll take the risk," I said. We performed the ritual that night in the church's basement, using equipment smuggled from a hospital by one of Vasquez's contacts. I lay on a table, IVs in both arms, as my blood was drawn out and new blood pumped in. It took hours, the process agonizingly slow, my body fighting the transfusion, my mind screaming with the wolf woman's rage as she felt her connection weakening. She came for me. I felt her approaching, felt her power battering against the church's wards, felt her fury at my betrayal. She screamed in my mind, threatened my family, promised endless torture. I held on, held fast, felt my blood leaving, felt the new blood entering, felt the connection stretching, thinning, breaking. And then, with a sound like a rubber band snapping, it was gone. The wolf woman's voice, her control, her presence in my mind, all gone. I was free. I screamed, a sound of pure relief and terror as the memories flooded back. The cemetery, the mausoleum, the deaths, the feeding, everything she had made me forget, everything I had done under her control, everything I had become. I remembered it all, and I wept. Vasquez held me as I sobbed, her arms strong and comforting. "It's over," she whispered. "You're free. Now you can fight back." I didn't go home that night. I couldn't face Maria, couldn't face my children, couldn't bear to let them see what I had become. I stayed at the church, planning, preparing, learning everything the order could teach me about the wolf woman and how to destroy her. I learned about silver, the traditional weapon against werewolves, though Vasquez warned me that the wolf woman was not truly a werewolf, not in the traditional sense. She was something else, something older, a spirit of predation that had taken human form. Silver might hurt her, might slow her down, but it wouldn't kill her. I learned about fire, which was effective against most supernatural creatures. The wolf woman feared fire, Vasquez said, feared the light and the heat that represented everything she was not. But fire was difficult to control, dangerous to use, and the wolf woman was fast. Too fast to be caught in a simple trap. I learned about the lupo, the wolf woman's mate. It was her weakness, Vasquez explained. She loved it in her way, depended on it, drew strength from their bond. If I could kill the lupo, the wolf woman would be weakened, vulnerable, perhaps even mortal. I armed myself with silver bullets, silver knives, holy water blessed by priests who knew the truth, and fire, flares, Molotov cocktails, anything that could burn. I tracked the wolf woman's movements, used my police contacts to find her kills, followed her trail to her new lair in the abandoned industrial district. I found her on Halloween night, the anniversary of her first appearance in 1954. She had returned to the cemetery, to the tomb of Lupo, to perform some ritual, some sacrifice. The moon was full, the night was cold, and the dead seemed to watch from their graves as I approached. She was waiting for me. She knew I was coming, had probably known from the moment the bond broke. She stood in the cemetery's center, the Lupo at her side, surrounded by the bodies of her latest victims. 5 people, arranged in a pentagram, their organs arranged in patterns around them. "Detective," she said, her voice cold and hard, all pretense of beauty gone. "You broke my hold. No one has ever done that. No one has ever escaped me." "I'm full of surprises," I said, raising my gun. The silver bullets were loaded, blessed, ready. "You think those can hurt me?" she laughed. "Silver, blessings. I am older than your religions, older than your metals. I am the hunger that was here before humans, the predator that will remain when you are all dust." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm going to try anyway." I fired. The silver bullet hit her in the chest and she staggered, surprised. The Lupo roared and charged, and I fired again, hitting it in the shoulder, making it stumble but not stop. They were on me in seconds, the wolf woman's claws raking across my face, the Lupo's jaws snapping at my throat. I fought back, stabbing with silver knives, burning with holy water, doing everything I had learned to do. But they were too strong, too fast, too ancient. The wolf woman pinned me to the ground, her yellow eyes inches from mine, her breath hot and foul. "You should have stayed bound," she hissed. "You should have served me willingly. Now you will die slowly, and I will feast on your fear for days." "No," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I had one weapon left, one chance. I reached into my pocket, found the flare, pulled the pin. The flame exploded between us, white-hot and searing. The wolf woman screamed, a sound of pure agony, and reeled back, her skin smoking, her hair igniting. The Lupo howled, the fire catching its fur, driving it back. I scrambled up, grabbing more flares, more fire. I threw them, one after another, surrounding the creatures with walls of flame. They tried to escape, tried to flee, but I had planned this, had prepared the cemetery with accelerant, with fuel, with everything needed to turn it into an inferno. The tomb of Lupo caught first, the old wood and cloth and paper inside igniting quickly. Then the dry grass, the Spanish moss, the very air seemed to burn. The wolf woman screamed, trapped in the circle of fire, her skin blistering, her power fading. "You can't kill me," she shrieked. "I am eternal, I am the night." "Maybe," I said, throwing the last flare directly at her, "but you can burn." The fire consumed her. I watched as she thrashed, as her stolen beauty melted away, as her true form was revealed. A thing of darkness and hunger, a void in the shape of a woman. She burned and she screamed, and the Lupo burned with her, the two creatures writhing together in the flames. When it was over, when the fire had burned itself out and the sun was rising over the smoldering cemetery, I searched the ashes. I found bones, charred and broken, human and other. I found teeth, too many teeth, melted and fused. I found the remains of the wolf woman and her mate, destroyed at last. I went home to Maria that morning, covered in soot and blood, my face scarred by the wolf woman's claws. She held me, asked no questions, simply accepted me back. I told her everything, finally, the truth about where I had been, what I had faced, what I had become. She didn't understand all of it, but she understood enough. She understood that I had fought a monster and won, that I had protected our family, our city, our world. The official report called it a gas leak explosion, the fire that destroyed a section of Mobile Cemetery. The bodies were identified as homeless people, victims of a serial killer who had died in the blaze. I was commended for my bravery, promoted to lieutenant, given a medal for service above and beyond. But I know the truth. I know what I fought, what I killed, what I became. And I know that there are other monsters out there, other creatures of darkness, waiting for their chance to hunt. I am still a cop, still a detective, still a man who protects the innocent. But now I am also a hunter, a warrior against the darkness. The Order of the Silver Stake has become my family, my allies, my support in a world that is more dangerous than most people know. And I am waiting for the next monster, the next threat, the next nightmare to emerge from the shadows. Because I know with absolute certainty that the wolf woman was not unique, that there are others like her, other ancient evils, other predators wearing human faces. The night is dark and full of terrors, but I am no longer afraid. I have faced the worst and I have survived. I have killed the wolf woman of Mobile and I will kill whatever comes next. This is my story. This is my warning. The monsters are real. They walk among us. They hunt us. And only those who are willing to face them, to fight them, to burn them can hope to survive. Be vigilant. Be ready. And if you ever see a woman with yellow eyes and too many teeth, run. Or fight. The story does not end with the wolf woman's death. How could it? Something that ancient, that powerful, that hungry does not simply cease to exist because its physical form is destroyed. The fire burned her body, yes, reduced her flesh to ash and bone, scattered her essence to the winds, but the hunger remains, the predator remains. The wolf woman is not truly dead, only dormant, waiting, healing, planning her return. I did not understand this at first. In the months following the fire, I believed I was free. I returned to normal life, or as normal as life can be for a man who has seen what I have seen. I worked my cases, loved my wife, raised my children. I grew older, grayer, slower. I thought the nightmare was behind me. I was wrong. It began with dreams. Dreams of the cemetery, of fire, of yellow eyes watching me from the smoke. Dreams of being hunted, of running through dark streets with something pursuing me, something that ran on too many legs and smelled of jasmine and blood. Dreams of being eaten alive, of feeling teeth in my flesh, of being consumed piece by piece while I screamed. I told myself they were just dreams, just memories, just trauma working itself out. I went to therapy, took sleeping pills, tried to forget. But the dreams grew worse, more vivid, more real. I would wake with scratches on my body, bites on my arms, wounds that I had no memory of receiving. And then, 6 months after the fire, I found the first body. I was off duty, walking through Bienville Square on a warm spring evening when I smelled it. The scent of jasmine, strong and cloying, coming from somewhere in the park. I followed it, against my better judgment, against every instinct that screamed at me to run. I found the body beneath the old oaks, the same oaks where Bobby Tanner had died, where this had all begun. It was a young woman, probably in her 20s, dressed in business clothes, a briefcase lying beside her. Her throat was torn out. Her chest was opened. Her organs were arranged in patterns around her body. And her face was frozen in that same expression of terminal horror, eyes wide, mouth open, the rictus of someone who had seen something that no human should see. The wolf woman was back. I knew it immediately with a certainty that transcended logic. The MO was identical, the wounds identical, the arrangement identical. The creature I had burned, the monster I had destroyed, had returned, or perhaps had never truly left. I called it in, reported the body, did my job as a detective. But I knew, even as I filled out the paperwork, even as I supervised the crime scene, that this was different. This was personal. The wolf woman had placed the body here in this place at this time for me to find. She was taunting me, telling me that she had survived, that she had healed, that she was hunting again. And she was hunting me. The dreams grew worse after that. Every night I would see her standing at the foot of my bed, her yellow eyes glowing in the darkness, her smile showing those terrible teeth. She would speak to me, whisper things, promises and threats. "I own you," she would say. "I always have. I always will." I told Vasquez about the dreams, about the new body. She was troubled, more troubled than I had ever seen her. "It shouldn't be possible," she said. "The fire should have destroyed her, dispersed her essence. She shouldn't be able to reform so quickly." "But she has," I said. "Yes," Vasquez agreed. She has, which means she's found a new source of power, someone to feed her, to sustain her, to help her heal. Who? Vasquez looked at me for a long moment, her eyes sad. You, detective. You're still connected to her. You broke her bond, but you didn't sever it completely. She still has a piece of you, and you're feeding her even now. Your dreams, your fear, your guilt, she's feeding on all of it. How do I stop? You can't, Vasquez said. Not completely. The only way to sever the connection is to destroy her completely, body and soul. And to do that, you need to find her heart. Her heart. The wolf woman is not a living creature, not truly. She's a spirit of hunger, a predator given form. But she has a heart, a physical anchor that ties her to this world. If you can find it and destroy it, you can kill her permanently. Where is it? I don't know, Vasquez admitted. It's hidden, protected, somewhere only she knows, but I can help you find it. There's a ritual, an ancient divination that can reveal the location of a spirit's heart, but it requires sacrifice. What kind of sacrifice? Blood, Vasquez said. Yours. You must bleed for her, detective. Bleed until you're close to death. Only then will the connection be strong enough to reveal her secrets. I agreed. What choice did I have? The wolf woman was hunting again, killing again, and it was only a matter of time before she came for my family, my friends, everything I loved. I had to find her heart. I had to destroy her, no matter the cost. We performed the ritual in the church's basement, the same place where I had broken her bond. I lay on the table, Vasquez beside me with a silver knife. She cut my wrists, deep and long, and my blood flowed into a bowl, a river of red that seemed to pulse with its own life. Speak her name, Vasquez commanded. Call her, force her to reveal herself. Wolf woman, I whispered, my voice weak from blood loss. Loup-garou, predator of the night, I summon you. Show me your heart, show me where you hide. The world dissolved. I was no longer in the church, no longer on the table. I was somewhere else, somewhere dark and cold and old. I was in the wolf woman's lair, her true lair, the place where her heart was hidden. It was a cave deep underground, far beneath the city of Mobile. The walls were covered in bones, human bones, arranged in patterns that suggested ritual and worship. In the center of the cave was an altar, and on the altar, surrounded by candles that burned with blue flame, was a heart. Not a human heart. Something larger, darker, covered in fur and pulsing with an unnatural rhythm. It was the wolf woman's heart, her anchor to this world, the source of her power and her immortality. You found it, her voice said, and she was there, materializing from the shadows, her yellow eyes gleaming. But finding it is not the same as reaching it, detective. This is my place, my domain, my temple. Here I am invincible. We'll see about that, I said, and I lunged for the heart. She was faster. She caught me, her claws raking across my chest, her teeth snapping at my throat. I fought back, but she was too strong, too powerful in this place. She threw me against the wall of bones, and I felt ribs crack, felt blood fill my mouth. Foolish, she laughed, approaching me as I lay bleeding. You thought you could defeat me in my own temple. You thought your human courage would be enough. I have survived 10,000 years, detective. I have killed millions. You are nothing to me, less than nothing. She stood over me, her terrible beauty somehow more awful in the blue candlelight. But you amuse me. You have spirit. You have defied me, fought me, burned me. No one has ever done that, so I will offer you a choice one last time. Serve me willingly, become my companion, my hunter, my mate, or die here in the dark, alone and forgotten. Go to hell, I spat. She shrugged, so be it. She raised her hand, claws extended, ready to strike. And then I woke. I was back in the church on the table, Vasquez shaking me, screaming my name. Sam, Sam, wake up, you're bleeding out. I sat up, gasping, my wrist still bleeding, my chest aching with phantom wounds from the wolf woman's claws. But I knew now. I knew where her heart was. I knew how to destroy her. "The old copper mine," I said, my voice raspy. "North of the city. Her heart is there in the caves below." Vasquez's eyes widened. "The copper mine? That was abandoned in the 1920s, flooded, collapsed. No one has been down there in a century." "That's why she chose it," I said. "It's hidden, inaccessible, perfect for her purposes." "Then that's where we go," Vasquez said. "I'll gather the order. We'll need every weapon, every ward, every bit of knowledge we possess." "No," I said, standing despite the weakness, the pain, the blood loss. "This is my fight. She wants me. She's been calling me, feeding on me, drawing me to her. If I go alone, if I face her alone, she'll be focused on me. You can strike when her guard is down." "That's suicide," Vasquez said. "Maybe," I agreed, "but it's the only way." I went to the mine alone, armed with silver and fire and holy water, prepared to die if necessary. The entrance was hidden, overgrown with vegetation, but I found it, descended into the darkness, followed the tunnels that led deep beneath the earth. She was waiting for me. She stood in the cavern that held her temple, surrounded by her worshippers, humans she had corrupted, transformed, made into her servants. They were pale and thin, their eyes yellow, their teeth too sharp. They were becoming like her, I realized. She was making more of her kind. "You came," she said, smiling. "I knew you would. We are bound, detective. You cannot resist me." "I'm here to end this," I said, raising my weapons. "One of us dies tonight." "Agreed," she said, and she attacked. The battle was terrible. She was faster than I remembered, stronger, more powerful. Her worshippers joined the fight, swarming me, clawing at me, trying to drag me down. I fought back, silver flashing, fire burning, holy water sizzling as it struck corrupted flesh. I killed them, all of them. The worshippers fell before me, their bodies dissolving into ash, their souls released from the wolf woman's corruption. I cut through them like wheat, fighting my way toward the altar, toward the heart. The wolf woman screamed, a sound of pure rage, and she was on me, her claws tearing at my face, her teeth seeking my throat. We struggled, rolling on the stone floor, each trying to gain the upper hand. She was winning. I could feel it. She was too strong, too ancient, too hungry. But I had prepared for this. I had one weapon left, one that she wouldn't expect. As she pinned me, as her teeth closed on my throat, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the bomb. Not a large bomb, nothing military grade. Just a simple device, homemade, filled with silver shrapnel and blessed oil. I had made it myself, following Vasquez's instructions, preparing for this moment. I triggered it. The explosion was deafening, the silver shrapnel tearing through the wolf woman's body, the blessed oil burning her from the inside out. She screamed, released me, thrashed in agony as the silver poisoned her, the fire consumed her. I scrambled up, bleeding, burned, half dead, and I ran for the altar. The heart was there, still beating, still pulsing with dark power. I grabbed it, felt its terrible weight, its unnatural warmth. "No," the wolf woman screamed, crawling toward me, her body smoking, her form flickering. "You can't, I am eternal, I am." I crushed it. I squeezed the heart with all my strength, felt it burst in my hands, felt the black blood spray, felt the power within it shatter like glass. The wolf woman screamed one last time, a sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the world, and then she was gone. Truly gone. Not burned, not dispersed, but destroyed. Her essence, her power, her hunger, all of it gone. I stood in the silence, holding the remains of her heart, feeling the power drain away, feeling the connection between us finally, truly sever. I was free. I was alive. I had won. I climbed out of the mine, emerged into the light of dawn, and I wept. I wept for joy, for relief, for the end of the nightmare. I wept for the dead, for Bobby Tanner and Patty O'Malley and all the others who had died. I wept for myself, for what I had become, for what I had done. Vasquez was waiting for me at the mine's entrance, along with the other members of the order. They embraced me, congratulated me, celebrated my victory, but I could see the sadness in their eyes. They knew, as I did, that this was not truly the end. The wolf woman was destroyed, yes, but there would be others. There are always others. I returned to my life, to my wife, to my children. I retired from the police force, unable to bear the memories, the trauma, the constant reminder of what I had faced. I became a hunter full-time, working with the Order, tracking down the other monsters, the other threats, the other nightmares. And sometimes, late at night, I still smell jasmine. I still hear singing. I still feel yellow eyes watching me from the darkness. But when I turn, when I look, there is nothing there. The wolf woman is dead, truly dead. I destroyed her heart, severed her connection to this world, sent her back to whatever darkness spawned her. She is gone, but I am still here, still fighting, still hunting. This is my final testament. If you are reading this, it means I am dead. It means I have finally found a monster I couldn't defeat, a nightmare that was too strong. But I died fighting. I died protecting the innocent. I died as a hunter, as a warrior, as a man. The wolf woman is gone, but the night is still dark and full of terrors. Be vigilant. Be prepared. And if you ever find yourself facing something that shouldn't exist, something that hunts you, something that wants to consume you, fight. Fight with everything you have. Because the only thing that stands between humanity and the darkness is the will to resist, the courage to fight, the determination to survive. I am Samuel Cortez. I killed the wolf woman of Mobile, and I am at peace. Lieutenant Rhett, Samuel Cortez, Order of the Silver Stake. I thought I was done. I thought the wolf woman's destruction meant peace, meant rest, meant an end to the horror. I was wrong. There is no rest for the hunter, no peace for the warrior, no end to the darkness that threatens humanity. There is only the next battle, the next monster, the next nightmare. Let me tell you about the children, about the ones who survived, who escaped, who carry the wolf woman's curse into the world. Let me tell you what I've seen in the 5 years since I destroyed their mother, the horrors I've witnessed, the deaths I've cataloged, the atrocities I've been unable to prevent. The first child I found was in Birmingham, Alabama, 6 months after the wolf woman's death. A woman named Sarah Jenkins, 32 years old, kindergarten teacher, pillar of her community. She had been attacked by the wolf woman years ago, had drunk her blood during the ritual transformation, had been kept in the copper mine as a servant until my final battle. She escaped the destruction, fled to Birmingham, tried to live a normal life. She failed. The hunger was too strong, the call of the predator too loud. Sarah Jenkins began killing in October, the same month the wolf woman had first hunted Mobile. She started with stray animals, dogs and cats, then moved to larger prey, a deer in a local park, a cow from a nearby farm. By November, she was hunting humans. Her first victim was a homeless man named Joe Martinez, found under a bridge with his throat torn out, his chest opened, his heart missing. The police thought it was a coyote attack, maybe a feral dog. They didn't recognize the pattern. I did. I arrived in Birmingham 3 days after Martinez's body was discovered. I found Sarah Jenkins in her apartment, covered in blood, surrounded by the organs of her second victim, a young college student named Emily Carter, killed while jogging through the park. Sarah was eating when I kicked in the door, consuming Emily's heart with the ravenous hunger of the truly cursed. She didn't try to run. She stood up, smiled at me with teeth that were too sharp, and said, "Mother told me about you, Detective Cortez. She said you were dangerous. She said you would come for us." "Your mother is dead," I said, raising my gun loaded with silver bullets. "Is she?" Sarah laughed. "Or did you just destroy her body? Her spirit lives on, detective, in me, in my brothers and sisters. We are her legacy, her children, her revenge." She attacked before I could fire. She was fast, faster than the wolf woman had been, her youth giving her speed that the ancient predator had lost. She was on me in an instant, claws raking across my chest, teeth snapping at my throat. I fell back, firing blindly, silver bullets tearing through her shoulder, her hip, her abdomen. She didn't stop. She was healing as fast as I could wound her, the wolf woman's curse making her nearly invincible. I grabbed my silver knife, stabbed her in the heart, and still she fought, clawing at my face, trying to tear out my eyes. I did the only thing I could. I set her on fire. I had prepared for this, knowing that fire was the wolf woman's weakness, hoping it would be her children's weakness too. I had a flamethrower in my van, a heavy-duty weapon designed for clearing brush, modified to spray napalm instead of simple flame. I used it now, dousing Sarah Jenkins in liquid fire, watching her burn. She screamed. God, how she screamed. The sound wasn't human, wasn't even animal. It was something else, something older and more terrible, the sound of a spirit being torn from its anchor and cast into the void. She burned and she thrashed and she tried to reach me, to pull me into the fire with her. I let her burn. I stood and watched until there was nothing left but ash and bone, until the screaming stopped, until the apartment was silent except for the crackle of flames. Then I walked out, got in my van and drove away. The Birmingham Fire Department found the bodies, 2 charred corpses in an apartment fire. They ruled it accidental, an electrical short, never knowing that one of those corpses was a monster who had killed 2 people and would have killed more. I thought that was the end. I thought Sarah Jenkins was the only survivor, the only child of the wolf woman left to hunt. I was wrong. The second child was in Montgomery, a man named David Chen, 45 years old, businessman, father of 2. He had been attacked during the wolf woman's reign in Mobile, had been taken to the copper mine, had been transformed. Like Sarah, he tried to resist, tried to live a normal life. Like Sarah, he failed. But David was smarter, stronger, more controlled. He didn't hunt in the city, where the police would notice. He hunted in the countryside, in the small towns and farms around Montgomery. He took travelers, drifters, people who wouldn't be missed. He had killed 7 people in the year since his escape, 7 people whose disappearances were never connected, never investigated. I found him by accident, following a lead on a missing person case that reminded me of the wolf woman's M.O. A traveler found by the side of the road, throat torn, chest opened, organs arranged in a pattern around the body. The local sheriff thought it was a cult killing, some satanic ritual. I knew better. I tracked David Chen to his home, a nice suburban house with a white picket fence and a garden full of roses. He wasn't there when I arrived, but his family was. His wife, Margaret, and his 2 daughters, Emily and Sophia, ages 12 and 8. They were dead. David had killed them or tried to transform them or simply lost control. The house was a slaughterhouse, blood on the walls, organs in the kitchen, the girls' bodies arranged on the dining room table like some obscene feast. Margaret had fought back. I could see the defensive wounds, the scratches, the bite marks. But she hadn't been strong enough, hadn't been fast enough. I found David in the basement, surrounded by his family's blood, eating his wife's heart. He looked up when I entered, his eyes yellow, his teeth too sharp, his smile full of meat and madness. "Detective Cortez," he said, his voice guttural, inhuman. "I've been expecting you. Sarah told me you were coming, in my dreams, in my visions." "Sarah's dead," I said. "I know," David said, and he actually smiled. "She was weak. She couldn't control the hunger, but I can. I have controlled it for a year, feeding only when I must, taking only those who won't be missed. I am not a monster, detective. I am simply different." "You killed your family," I said. "They found out," David said, and his voice was almost sad. "Margaret saw me feeding, saw what I had become. She threatened to tell the police, to have me committed, to have me destroyed. I couldn't let her do that. I loved her. I love my girls, but I couldn't let them destroy me. So you destroyed them instead." "I tried to make them like me," David said. "I tried to give them the gift, the power, the immortality, but it didn't work. They weren't strong enough. They died." He stood up, his body changing, shifting, becoming more wolf-like, more predatory. "Now, detective, you have a choice. Join me, become like me, hunt with me, or die." Neither, I said, and I attacked. The battle was brief. David was strong, but he was overconfident, unused to facing someone who knew what he was, who was prepared to fight him. I used the silver bullets, the holy water, the fire. I burned him as I had burned Sarah, watched him scream and thrash and die. But before he died, he told me something. Something that still haunts me, that keeps me awake at night, that drives me to continue hunting even when I want nothing more than to rest. "There are more of us," he gasped, his body smoking, his flesh melting. "Dozens, maybe hundreds." The wolf woman was creating an army, detective, an army of predators. "You destroyed her, but you didn't destroy us. We are still here. We are still hunting, and we will have our revenge." He died laughing, and I stood in the burning house, surrounded by the dead, and I knew that he was right. The wolf woman had been preparing for something, building something, creating a force that would outlast her. I had destroyed her, but I hadn't destroyed her legacy. In the 5 years since I have hunted them, I have tracked them from city to city, state to state, killing them one by one. I have faced the wolf woman's children in New Orleans, in Atlanta, in Nashville, in Memphis. I have killed them in burning buildings, in abandoned warehouses, in dark alleys, in empty fields. Each one is different, unique, with their own strengths and weaknesses. Some are fast like Sarah. Some are strong like David. Some can change shape, become wolves, become mist, become shadow. Some have powers I don't understand, magic that shouldn't exist. But they all have one thing in common: they all die, they all burn, and they all scream before the end. I have killed 37 of them in 5 years. 37 monsters created by the wolf woman, 37 predators who would have killed thousands if I hadn't stopped them. I have saved lives, countless lives, by destroying these creatures before they could fully embrace their nature. But there are more. There are always more. I receive reports from other hunters, from the Order, from police departments who have seen things they can't explain. There are sightings in every state, every city, every town. The wolf woman's children are spreading, multiplying, creating their own offspring, their own legacies. I am 68 years old now, too old for this. My body is broken, scarred, held together by willpower and painkillers. I have arthritis in my hands, a bad hip, a heart that skips beats when I'm stressed. I should retire, should rest, should let younger hunters take over. But I can't, I won't. Not while the wolf woman's children still walk the earth, not while I can still fight, not while I can still kill. The latest reports indicate there are at least 50 more of them scattered across the southeastern United States, with sightings as far north as Chicago and as far west as Texas. They are organizing, communicating, building networks. They have learned from their mother's mistakes. They are more careful now, more subtle, more deadly. They no longer hunt openly but strike from shadows, taking victims who won't be missed, hiding the evidence, moving on before hunters like me can arrive. But I am patient, I am experienced. I know their patterns, their weaknesses, their tells. I can smell the jasmine that follows them, sense the cold that precedes them, feel the hunger that radiates from them like heat from a furnace. I will find them. I will kill them. I will not stop until every last child of the wolf woman is destroyed, until their curse is wiped from the earth, until the night is safe once more. This is my promise. This is my oath. This is my final mission, the only thing that matters, the only thing that keeps me breathing. I am Samuel Cortez, hunter of monsters, slayer of the wolf woman, destroyer of her children, and I will not rest until the work is done. If you are reading this, if you have found this testament after my death, know that the hunt continues. Take up my weapons, learn my methods, join the Order, and kill them all for humanity, for the innocent, for the future. The wolf woman is dead, but her children live, and they must be destroyed. It has been 5 years since I destroyed the wolf woman's heart. 5 years of hunting, of fighting, of killing the creatures that prey on humanity. I have faced vampires in New Orleans, demons in the Appalachians, ghosts in the old plantations. I have killed and been killed, died and been revived, sacrificed everything and gained nothing. But I cannot stop. The order needs me. The world needs me. And the wolf woman, though destroyed, left a legacy. She had children. Not biological children, of course. The wolf woman was not human, could not reproduce in the human sense, but she had created servants, disciples, creatures who had drunk her blood and been transformed. They had escaped the destruction of the mine, fled into the night, hidden in the shadows, and now they are hunting. The first sign came 6 months ago. A body in Birmingham, the same M.O., throat torn, chest opened, organs arranged in patterns. Then another in Montgomery. Then one in Pensacola across the state line. Then New Orleans, Atlanta, Chattanooga. The wolf woman's children were spreading, multiplying, creating their own hunting grounds. I have been tracking them, hunting them, killing them. But there are too many, and I am too old, too slow, too tired. I need help. I need an army. I need something I don't have. And so I write this, my final testament, my warning to the world. The wolf woman may be dead, but her hunger lives on. Her children walk the night, wearing human faces, hunting human prey. They are in your cities, your towns, your neighborhoods. They could be anyone. The kindly neighbor who brings you cookies, the beautiful woman at the bar, the helpful stranger who offers you a ride on a dark night. They are predators. They are monsters. They are the wolf woman's legacy, and they will not stop until they have consumed everything. Learn from my mistakes. Don't trust the beautiful stranger who smells of jasmine. Don't follow the voice singing in the darkness. Don't investigate the tracks with too many toes. And if you ever find yourself facing something with yellow eyes and too many teeth, run. Run and don't look back. But if you can't run, if you're trapped, if you have no choice but to fight, then fight. Fight with everything you have. Fight with silver and fire and holy water. Fight with your bare hands and your teeth if you must. Fight until you win or until you die, because surrender is worse than death. Surrender means becoming like them. Means losing your humanity, your soul, everything that makes you human. Means becoming a monster, a predator, a thing that hunts and kills and consumes. I have seen it happen. I have watched good people, strong people, brave people become corrupted by the wolf woman's power. I have killed them, put them down like rabid dogs because it was the only mercy left to offer. I don't want that fate for anyone. I don't want that fate for myself. So I fight, I hunt, I kill. And when I finally find a monster that's too strong, when I finally meet my end, I will die fighting. I will die as a man, as a hunter, as a warrior against the darkness. This is my legacy. This is what I leave behind. Knowledge, warning, hope. The knowledge that monsters are real. The warning that they walk among us. And the hope that they can be defeated, that the darkness can be pushed back, that humanity can survive. If you are reading this, you are probably a hunter, a member of the order, someone who fights the darkness. Or you are a civilian, someone who stumbled across this testament and now knows the truth. Either way, heed my words, learn from my experiences, and above all, remember. The wolf woman is dead, but the hunt continues. Lieutenant Rhett, Samuel Cortez' Final Testament. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe, so you don't miss the stories yet to come.